Is in open session at 6:30 p.m. Sue, can you hear us? Information sharing session report, superintendent's report, discipline and other updates.
Okay, before we get to discipline and behavior data, we have some great news. We had 60+ candidates for our AP position at Torrington High School, and we have narrowed it down to one. She's here this evening. Yes, we are very, very excited to introduce to you Amanda Torres. She is our new assistant principal at Torrington High School, and Kim's gonna just give you a little bio, and then hopefully we can at least have her wave at us. You can wave at us.
Okay, thank you. It is my pleasure to welcome Amanda Torres as our new assistant principal for Torrington High School. Most recently, Ms. Torres has been a lead teacher and department chair for PE and health, and I'm going to butcher the name of this high school. I just want to tell you that. At Coginchog High, did I say that right? All right, I've been practicing all day. I just want you to know. At Coginchog High School in Durham. Additionally, she's been the district K-12 coordinator for PE and health for the Middlesex Consortium district schools, participating in district leadership meetings, coordinating district-wide professional development, and engaging in curriculum and assessment work for the district. Before her time in Durham, she was a health teacher for Milford Public Schools, both at the middle school and the high school level. Over her career, she has also been an athletic coach for cheerleading and for track and field. As 2018's Teacher of the Year in Milford, she co-wrote and won a National FOLA Challenge grant for Milford Public Schools. She was the recipient of the 2021 Connecticut Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance High School Physical Education Teacher of the Year, and has just been named as the 2023 Society of Health and Physical Educators America Eastern District Teacher of the Year. She is also a finalist competing for the National Shape Teacher of the Year title. Her most recent supervisor told me that she is amazing, outstanding, and hardworking, and we are very fortunate to have her on our team. Amanda holds a Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science from Southern Connecticut State University, earned her Master's of Arts in Integrative Health from the Graduate Institute, and a 6-year degree in Educational Leadership from Central Connecticut State University. She's currently working to complete her doctorate at the University of Bridgeport in Educational Leadership with a specialization in international education. She holds her certification in health, physical education, and intermediate administration. Amanda has consistently been recognized for her amazing contributions to the district she has served, and has demonstrated a fierce commitment to supporting students and producing results in student achievement. Her commitment to driving academic, civic, and social learning expectations for students, and with forming relationships with families and community partners, has resulted in tremendous success for the school populations that she's been a part of. Please join me in congratulating Ms. Torres on her new position as our Torrington High School Assistant Principal.
Well, would you like to say hi?
I'm beyond words, like so excited to join the Torrington Public Schools. It's a pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you for coming.
We're happy to have you. Okay, so just moving on. You don't have to stay for the whole meeting. No. I think plenty of the meetings you have to stay for it. This one isn't it. That's that. Okay, so we're going to jump forward into our discipline data. This is just a mid-year data update. Just remembering that the principals will give you more of the nitty-gritty, the detail when they are presenting at the school improvement meetings. And we give you the schedule in the packet, and we'll give you reminders as well of the different grade levels that we'll present during school improvement, just so that you have a sense of what's going on with behavior or attendance, as well as the academic progress that they're making. So this is just, like I said, the overview. And then if you have questions, concerns, you can always bring them up at SIC or at our next board meeting. So just to start off, we can move this one. Josh, thank you. Just a frame of discipline. Discipline needs to teach. So each infraction is a teachable moment. And I know that our administrators feel this way, and we try to have a culture of teachable moments, right, for behavior and discipline as well as academics. So it's our hope that our students will learn from their experiences. And some may say their mistakes, right, as we grow. Next slide, please, Josh. So yes, we want to set expectations. We have consequences. There are parameters for appropriate behaviors, because as kids get older, they really need to know what the new parameters are, what consequences can be, what the expectations are at the various levels. And we need to hold students accountable for those behaviors. So we really want to make sure that we are providing opportunities for students to become effective communicators, to learn how to have positive interactions, and to develop their problem-solving skills. Chances are, this is pre-COVID, post-COVID, 3 to 5% of our students may have repeat offenses. We had that range before. Certainly right after COVID, we had even more of repeat offenders and infractions. But the more we can provide a foundation, an instructional foundation, as well as some skill level in terms of these behaviors, the more effective students will be, and they won't be disappointed, frustrated, or they'll know how to deal with their frustrations and their disappointments. So before I go into numbers, I just want to share a little, story with you. Especially seeing as 7th grade seems to be our most difficult year. So in 7th grade, there was this girl who thought this guy was cute, and this guy thought this girl was cute. And so they kind of tortured each other through 7th grade. So at one point, this girl turned to the side, and the boy happened to throw pencil sharpener shavings in her mouth, which he thought was disgusting. So that was kind of bordered on, okay, now you're in my space and you're not so cute anymore. So as she left the class, she smashed her social studies book on the student's head, to which Mr. Isagna gave her an essay to write, because that was totally inappropriate behavior. Did not use communication skills, did not use good problem solving or anything else. However, just giving you this example, because I too would have become one of the infraction numbers that you are seeing in this package. I have since gone on to live beyond Randy Anderson and move forward, and I think to be a relatively, he's probably very cute adult, but just saying, okay, when you're looking at these infractions 1, 2, 3, we all make mistakes in our lives, and hopefully we are continuing to move forward. And as a principal, I would have these conversations with parents, because parents were devastated that their children had gotten an infraction or gotten into a problem or did not show good, reasonable responses. However, I would say to the parent, this is a good time for your child to really learn from his or her mistake. And then obviously we want all students to take responsibility. I did have to write my essay. I was very angry about my essay. My mother and Mr. Isagna thought it was hilarious. That was my consequence. But I didn't think it was fair because Randy didn't have to do it. Anyway, district-wide insights. Let's go to the next slide. I just wanted to, no, back one. So some of what you see here, okay, and obviously tongue in cheek, but when I'm talking about offenses, and when you start to look at the charts that I'm just going to highlight tonight, I'm not going to spend a lot of detail every single specific thing, because you're probably going to look at this and digest it and then come back, right? So secondary had a range of 1.43 to 3% in terms of repeat offenders. Elementary had 2 to 7%. And you may say, okay, well, why did elementary have more? But you have to remember, our youngest learners have a lot to learn, right? So they don't know that continually poking the, they probably do know, but you know, because this happens with their brothers and sisters in the back seat as well, that they shouldn't be poking them, but you know, they happen to be there. So they have to learn about personal space, and they have to learn about how to communicate. So we have more of those offenses at those younger ages. So we're teaching them. So over and over again, you'll hear me say it's a learning opportunity. Most of the infractions we found at transition grades, 4th and 9th grade this particular year. I think that's probably a trend. I think we have to do better with our transition grades in terms of really getting them ready, in terms of communicating the transition and helping them with those transition years. Sixth graders have less infractions. I think they're just so afraid. They're in a school with 1,000 kids and they're not used to that. Even Torrington is 600, 630. That's still less than 1,000. And those other kids are probably much bigger than they are. So seventh graders are the ones that keep pushing the needle, right? Secondary issues, as you may imagine, and you'll see this in the slides that follow. Tech is a number one for THS. They're just starting yonder. Defiance is for Torrington Middle School kids, right? Pushing the envelope and think about your own children, your own, siblings, your own years, or your own nieces and nephews. That's a time when you really push and skip in both schools. Hey, I'm trying to avoid that. I don't know. I'm too frustrated. I don't want to be in class. But even at elementary, one of the number one infractions is being out of bounds, eloping, trying to get away, trying to avoid that task, right? So really, we're trying to work on those pieces. So it's instructional as well as behavioral. So locations of the infractions, think about it. It's the times when they're going to interact the most. It's class, it's hall, it's cafeteria. And with elementary, it's class, it's cafeteria, it's playground. Even in my own experience, it was in the classroom, right? So what's nice in this data, and certainly the principals will share this more, they will share with you that, they are responding to those issues. Teachers are calling, they're coming. In particular, we start with the very first slide, THS monthly cell phone infractions. So these are infractions where the first slide is the number of infractions per grade per month. And then the next slide, I'm just going to give you a chance to look at that. So they're color coded by grade, and that's just the cell phone infractions. For blue is 9th grade throughout the months. Red is 10th grade, green is 11th, purple is 12th grade. So you can see that seniors are learning much faster than the other ones. Okay, which makes sense. 10th grade is having a tough time. They have more infractions, okay? And then if you go to the next slide, you see repeat infractions or repeat offenses. So you see that 41 students in the freshman class had the very first, remember the tiers that the board had set up in terms of consequences. So that's when the administration comes and takes the phone, they didn't have their pouch or whatever. Miraculously, a phone showed up, or it's the very first time, first offense. Second time, parent has to pick up the phone. For freshmen, that was 12 incidences. For the third time, then they actually have the consequence of phone is taken, parent has to pick it up, then you have an ISS. And then the fourth, and then all the way to the sixth. And obviously, when you get to the sixth, it becomes a defiance and it's really beyond just a tech violation. It goes into a different realm. But luckily enough, students are learning. 10th grade redeemed themselves. And even though they had a lot of first infractions, they didn't get to 4, 5, or 6. Unfortunately, for juniors and seniors, we got a 5, got a 6. But it's minimal. Our friend Ms. Rinaldi reminds us that we have had 528,000 times in a class where we've had 528,000 classes that students have been in since the beginning of the year. If you have a 6 block, you have 1,000 students, that many opportunities, 528,000 times kids could misbehave. So what you're seeing right now is infinitesimal compared to how many times kids really could misbehave. So that's a nice perspective in terms of the percentages that we have. So thank you, Shelley, for that. In the next slide. So now this is discipline when we look at everything that students could be involved in, defiance or skipping class or technology, where it's getting to that more edgy, I have to argue with you about the phone kind of thing. So what we're seeing is beginning of the year, September, kids were getting to know the ropes. October, November starts to escalate. And then January back down again. So that's nice. We've got mature students, hopefully learning, growing. We're hoping that's on a downward trend.
Is
I
this
hope-
district-wide? What is?
No, this one's just the high school. We're still
Okay.
just in the high school, okay? And then the next slide is office discipline referrals by grade 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. And you see that nice decline as students mature once again. And then I think the next slide is the most important slide, but probably the most difficult to read, so I'll take a moment on that slide. So what you see there is that there is change in terms of how many students are really getting to those upper level, or what you see on the right-hand side in that lavender color, where you have the same students with repeat offenses, where they're just not learning it, they're just not getting it. So if you look all the way to the end, you've got 6.31%. So really 6% of our students who have that 6 or more referrals or office referrals, if that makes sense to you. Okay, whereas if you look at 0 to 1, which I would have been in that category, right? We have 67% of students on track. And then really 0 to 5 is really pretty minimal. You're talking about the bulk of your students. You're talking about 94% of your students doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is awesome. So then if we look at suspension and expulsion, in-school suspensions, we've had 174. We're really hoping that reflection rooms, then the next level would be in-school suspensions, then the next level would be out-of-school suspensions. You have enough problems, obviously, that leads to expulsions. But the in-school suspensions, we're really hoping that's a preventive measure. That's a consequence. Students are doing their work. There's no socializing, there's no talking, there's focus on their schoolwork in that time period. Out of school, students can still work on their schoolwork, but obviously they're not within the school bounds. Expulsions, we've already had 3 at the high school, which is much less than what we've had last year. I'm going to go ahead into middle school. You'll see the same slides for all the different levels, so you'll start to get used to them. Do you have a question?
Just a quick question, this may be informative for all. When we're talking about like the discipline referral numbers per student, is this per type of infraction or total infractions for one student? You know what I mean? Like if a kid gets sent to the office 4 times for cell phones, does that count as 1 or does that count as 4?
It counts as 4 different times. No, good questions. And I know you're going to have more questions about this, so that's why I said we've got to follow up, and then I'll come back in June and give you a bigger scope, but you'll also have information coming from the principals as well. So it'll clarify a bit more. So if we go to the next slide, we actually go into the middle school. And so for the middle school cell phone infractions, we have in September, October, November, December, and you can really see that decline. Remembering that middle school started a little bit earlier than the high school. They started on April 25th last year. And so I think it really became a part of their culture much more easily at the beginning of this year. High school, they still had some growing pains, which is understandable. So then as we go to the next cell phone violations, then you can actually see the breakdown by grade. So once again, given all the violations that the students possibly could have, in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, there have been 0 who have gotten to that 3rd violation. So that's really excellent. So really, as you get into that 2nd year, I think the benefit also is, yes, I know the board really wanted students to have more focus in the classroom, and I think that's happened, but we've also had less residual issues. Like before, we were having students video things that were going on, or video, just whatever, and spillage over from social media interactions, disagreements, arguments that I think then were replayed during the day and got students riled up, and the Yonder really has helped with that. So I think it's made a huge difference, because even when you look at our secondary, there really have not been, even going to the expulsion level, the fights that we had seen in previous years. So I think it did make a difference. So now this is Torrington Middle School, average office discipline referrals per day per month. And you can see some of that immaturity factor. It wasn't that nice downward slide like the high school. It goes up again in January because it's just like, oh, I was free and I did whatever I wanted, less restriction. And so once again, middle school had to say, okay, wait just a second, let's go back, let's reinforce the rules. And so I think that's why you see that increase in the January numbers. And then this is what I was talking about. Go ahead, Josh, the next one. The grade level referrals, where you really can see that 7th grade spike. 6th graders are really trying to figure everything out when they get to the middle school. I think they're well behaved. 7th grade, okay, I've been here, it's kind of middle child syndrome. And then you go off into 8th grade. And you can see the maturity level there, which is really great. I think, I'm gonna conjecture, I'm gonna guess, when we get a 7th and 8th grade, we won't have that. So I think those 7th graders going off into the big new middle school, high school, I think we'll see what we see now in 6th grade. And then the 8th graders are gonna be, okay, now I'm getting ready to go to high school. So it's my hope that we won't see that spike because we won't have those 3 grades together. Go ahead, Joe. So when you go to this next slide, you can see the trends in terms of how much has really changed when you look at this year, when you're looking at really a huge number. You're really looking at 98% of our students doing what they're supposed to do in terms of that 0 to 5 office discipline referrals, versus that 6 to 9 is only a 1.43, which is really incredible. Because no offense to anybody, I think last year the middle school had the toughest time post-COVID. They just really struggled. And I just think for all our schools this year, and kudos to everybody, all our administrators, all our staff have done an amazing job transitioning out of that and changing the culture at our school sites. Because the numbers really, I think we have a lot of supports, which I think has helped, but I think the culture of the school has made a huge difference as well. So go ahead, Josh, just suspensions and expulsions. So as we see in-school suspensions, I'm fine with that being higher than our out-of-school suspensions. You want it to be hopefully a progressive discipline. Sure, I would love to have all of those numbers be lower, but I think that they're really trying to adhere to trying lunch detentions and a variety of different meetings and reflection groups, all services, social workers, guidance counselors, supports for the students prior to getting to these disciplinary measures. And I think we have a good support system in place for all of that. So now we're going to shift into elementary, and you won't see Yonder, obviously. And 4, 5, once again, as I said, that transition year, that 4th grade, more than the 5th grade, not excessive, but still more so. And I think it's just been tough. You see that nice, in the next one, that nice decline from September to January. Go ahead, John. Thank you. So we really didn't see the 4th and 5th graders needing that transition, so that was good. And then in the next one, the office discipline referrals, you see 2.7 for the 6 or more. So once again, really 97% of our students doing what they're supposed to be doing. I really think of that 0 to 5 as being that learning curve. Okay, maybe I had to push it a few too many times. Maybe shouldn't have to get to the 5, but 6 to 9 starts to get into more excessive. Go ahead. Next one. And then our suspension totals, we've got in-school suspensions, you see a drastic change in our elementary schools of 15, out-of-school suspensions 12, and then no expulsions, obviously, at the younger levels. And then we move into Southwest. And once again, for the average office discipline referrals, that nice decline. November was a kind of a spike, then back to business as usual. And hopefully that will decline as we get closer to 2. Once again, by grade, you got that 4th grade spike there, and then a decline with 5th, so some maturity going on. And then for office discipline referrals, 2.05%. So once again, 98% of students doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then suspension totals. We have in-school suspensions lower than the out-of-school suspensions. I know that Dr. McCann's working on a variety of different strategies so that we can hopefully intervene before students get to that point. So we keep learning, we keep growing. We meet once a month, the behavior teams, just so we talk district-wide about what we really need at those various grade levels. And I think that's really important to continue throughout the rest of the year. And then we really want to see if that will make a difference for our kids and in our data, obviously. So we're on our second to last school, Torrington. And Torrington, once again, that September to January. Just remembering that a lot of the students, when at K-3, it's tough. Those kindergartners are learning those skills. We have to teach those skills to our kindergartners. You see that in the next one, that grade level, nice downward trend, some maturity happening there. And don't forget, we have our BCBAs really working with our registered, our board certified behavior folks who are working with our administrators, our teachers, our paras, our registered behavior techs, so that they are sharing and modeling strategies. So our students are getting those skills at a very young age. So when you look at Torrington in the next one, I'm sorry, Josh, thank you. And you look in the lavender area, it's 7.34, which is, seems high, but really that was a huge portion of kindergarten, and really since that November time, we haven't seen the repeat of those offenders. So they're getting their own behavior under control, which is really nice to know. And learning some great skills. And then next one, Josh, for suspensions and in school and out of school, obviously you want to see very, very little at this age. Really, even for our out of school, you're really not looking at that unless it's like 2nd or 3rd grade. Certainly not for our K-1s. And then 0 expulsions. And then last but not least, we have Vogel Webmore. And they had a little bit of an increase in the January trend. You saw that nice downward slope from that October, November, December coming down. So just reminders in that January time. And then we have hopes that we'll be right back down in subsequent months coming up in February. Now, Vogel Webmore has a little bit different pattern. They do have an increase in office discipline referrals in 1st grade and 3rd grade. Sometimes it's just the chemistry of the students. They do have a little bit higher enrollment in that 1st grade, but really we don't have spaces to put more classes. So just thinking about what we're doing, once again, the behaviorists, the registered behavior techs, we have para support in there. Admins are responsive. So we've got some referrals going on, but we continue to pull apart the data so that we can look and kind of fine tune that as we go along. So we've got office discipline referrals in the lavender area. So you've got 3.98%, so almost 4%, but still 96% of students doing what they're supposed to be doing. And the very last one, in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions. So 2, even though that's a huge graph and it looks like it's an enormous amount, really, it's 2 students that are involved there, 0 out-of-school suspensions and 0 expulsions. So just in terms of more information to come, as I said, principals will be presenting the whole picture in terms of academic progress, behavior, attendance, when they share their site improvement plans and what they've been working on all year, and then what they're doing specifically to target these certain areas. I'll present again in June, and then we'll continue to implement and really learn together in terms of behavior strategies and interventions throughout the year. And then professional development training will continue to really focus in on student accountability and their engagement in class. We really focused in a lot during PD, and I know Sue's going to talk more about this in terms of just students' communication skills and having them really participate. And I think that makes a difference. I'll give you some examples in just a moment, but I do want to go to the next slide just so that you know that you do have the dates of those sub-meetings. If you do want to be present when those presentations will be given on from the different schools and principals. And then just at the very end, some positive changes I think that have happened that are indicative of the changes that are happening in the learning environment. One of them, it was great to be at one of the schools. A first grade teacher was teaching and repeatedly said, okay, now you're going to lead the lesson. And so the student shared her response and did a great job. And then she got to call on somebody who was, okay, I'm looking for somebody, and she sounded like the teacher, right? Who's well behaved and listening to others. I think that, and then she'd say, you know, Jeff is listening and paying attention. And so I'm going to call on Jeff, and he's going to get to teach the next lesson or the next problem. So it was really good. And it was nice to see the students getting up and talking and using their communication skills. Because it's not just about the academics, right? That spills over then into their behavior and their interactions and how they talk with one another outside of class as well. So even continuing to build the culture, I know at the middle school, students are encouraging each other to come to class because their classmates miss them when they're not at school, in particular at our alternative programs and our smaller programs where we have more limited, it's definitely like a family or life skills, and I try to really build those communities, very inclusive. And then at the high school, students getting the support they need. A student who was headed for expulsion became identified, and we found that she really had special ed needs. She's getting her needs met, she's passing her classes, she's attending regularly. So that was a wonderful success story. But I think getting our students hooked up with the supports that they need, whether they're behavioral or academic, really makes a difference. And also, as Sue has been saying over and over again, in terms of those foundational skills and having our new approach at that K-3 level, in particular in the reading area, so that students aren't getting to that frustration level where they want to run out of class because they can't stand it. I think that will pay year after year. That's a great investment in our students and their skills so that it makes a huge difference down the road. So that when they get to the 4 or 5 schools, or they get to the middle school, they get to the high school, they have those skills. And they stay in class, they don't skip, not just out of bounds. So thank you, that's just the overview.
So before I open the floor for questions, this is a lot of data to absorb. I think one of the things that I'm trying to understand is the whole process, like how a referral is made, where does it go? Does everything get entered in? Is it discretionary as to what gets entered in? Because, you know, the numbers on here are surprising to me. So I'm just trying to understand, you know, based on what we're hearing versus what's appearing on the papers, how the process works. And I think that would be helpful at a future meeting to understand what happens with a referral. I'm also interested in looking at the impact of behavior on the other students. So we have a lot of supports, which is great to help the students with the behavior issues. But we're hearing more and more from families about the impact on their kids on the other side of this. So I'd also like to look at it from that perspective also. So we will talk about this again. So open the floor, if people have additional things they would like. Ed?
Yeah, just a couple things that I'm interested in, probably related somewhat. The first thing is a little bit apparent as you look at the office discipline referrals per day per month, is that outside of a relatively flat Vogel Wetmore, the vast majority of sites decreased from November to January, with the one exception of the middle school. And I think that's an interesting outlier that may be worth examining. Not saying that there is a definitive answer, but there may be, whether it's within the school's control or not. That was the like immediate outlier pattern. And the other thing I'm interested in that may be worth looking at, and hear me out here, is this sort of, it's like the students' demography, but not their actual demographic characteristics. So I'm not interested in the students, racial demography, but I am interested in something like their sort of in-school demographics. For example, are they student athletes? Are they non-athlete extracurricular students, or are they students who participate in no extracurriculars? And cross-tab that with discipline referrals. And that's just an example. I'm sure there are plenty of options, but just sort of things that may sort of end up interacting with whether or not a particular student has disciplinary issues. And I think that's where maybe we can find some answers, as opposed to, we've seen now what's happening. And I think the next step is to start looking for where there are those patterns of students who are having these disciplinary problems. Because if the answer is not there, then fine. But I suspect that there may be some solutions in that data.
Just a quick question. All of the charts have historical data except for the suspension in and out and expulsion with Yonder Box having joined. Remember during the conversations for Yonder Box, it was supposed to reduce fights and things. I would just be curious, if those types of activities result in ISS and out of school expulsion, could we see the history? Like, is there a downward trend because of it?
In terms of those areas?
Yeah, just that everything else had a history besides this one. It'd just be interesting to see what the trend was for those.
Oh, I'm sorry. So
That's okay. I agree with the other requests that were just discussed, but I'd also, just one thought is, do we really want to wait until June before we get another update? I'd like to see something like this, at least at the secondary levels, at each monthly meeting, high level if you need to, or even, we could glance over it and then get the documentation to look at ourselves. But I don't really want to wait till June, just in case there's an influx somewhere that we could have mitigated the damage somewhere along the line if there was a trend that we were missing. That's all. Thank you.
So I had jotted down some questions. Some of them I think are kind of similar in the same vein as Fiona. You were saying about what are these referrals. So what infractions comprise these office referrals? What other infractions are not captured in this data? And what leads up to an office referral? So what are the things that happen? Because I don't think that the first time a kid gets in trouble, they get an office referral. So what happens before that? What are we seeing and what is not being captured here? And then when and where are the cell phone infractions being identified? Is this happening in the morning when kids are coming in? Are they refusing to lock up their phones? Does it happen when a kid takes it out of class? So that type of thing. Is there any differentiation in grade specific enforcement? Are there, is it being enforced evenly when all the kids come into the school, or is it just certain teachers, certain times of day where it may be capturing one age group more than another? So those are the main things.
questions, specific things that you're interested in getting for the next time we discuss this? Yes.
Actually, and also, I'm sorry, I forgot to say this, the Southwest, the difference between the ISS and the OSS and what accounts for that. because it's the only school that has that pattern.
Anything else, guys? Sue, did you have something else?
Oh, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you for everybody for putting that together. Do you have any other updates? No. All right, Office of Teaching and Learning updates.
Yeah, so this is a great segue. One of the things that I'm thinking about listening to this presentation, and obviously I'd seen it before, and some of the conversations that we've been having at district office is how challenging it is to be an educator today, right? Not that it wasn't always challenging, but I think now more than ever, there are so many competing factors for teachers, student attention, right? There's social media pressures, there's the things that always were. Sue and I joked earlier in the week about, some of the things that we used to do as kids, and she shared her story. And I saw something on social media the other day about, remember those little paper footballs you could make, write your little note, fold it up in a football and, chuck it across the room to your friend. And, that was, in the 90s or the 80s, that was Snapchat, and then you get in trouble for that. But we look back on that and we almost look back on it in a nostalgic way. We were like, oh, weren't those the greatest days, and now we're talking about discipline and behavior. And it seems a little bit more sterile. Anyway, I share that because I think it's important for us to recognize the challenges that our teachers are facing every single day when they walk into the classroom, and everything that they are competing with to keep their kids' attention. So to provide engaging instruction it's a Herculean task. So this is leading me, I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. What we've been working on in OTL is really providing our staff with professional development that's going to give them or allow them to enhance what they have in their toolkits so that they can compete. They can compete with, the AI and the social media and all of the things that kids have at their fingertips all the time that are so visually appealing and engaging. So one of the things that we started back in November is training in this idea of accountable talk or student discourse. And we're talking about students doing much of the talking in the classes, students talking to each other, students talking with teachers, so that it's productive, meaningful, accountable discourse that's happening throughout each lesson. We had what I believe was a very successful election day PD. We got a lot of really positive feedback from the staff who participated. As you remember, we grouped them K to 12. They loved that. We're planning it again in February. This time it's going to be an extension of what we started in November. So we're going to dive deeper into this notion of accountable talk. There's going to be a morning that everybody participates in about how can we make student thinking visible. And then in the afternoon, we're offering some choice, same concept, but what does that look like in math? What does that look like in humanities? What does that look like for some of our English learners? So I'm excited about that. I think our staff is excited about it. They're happy that we are staying the course with one idea instead of kind of what we call initiative overload. So we're doing that. The other thing that I just want to mention in terms of PD and how this might impact what Sue just shared and some of the behaviors that we see, kids are more engaged in what they're doing in the classroom. They're going to be less inclined to engage in these behaviors that we don't want to see. So, and I know Sue mentioned this briefly, but I just have to underscore this. The work that's happening at our K-3 and 4-5 schools right now, primarily our K-3 schools with Literacy How, is nothing short of amazing. Sue and I visited a class a couple of weeks ago, and I'll be honest, I was so excited sitting in that classroom watching this lesson. I forgot where I was for a moment, and I honestly squealed out loud. I was so excited. I lost my mind for a minute, and I just started yelling out loud because there were little kids, talking about, this is going to sound crazy, but syllables and root words and base words and Greek and Latin roots and nouns and verbs. And I just couldn't believe it. I was so excited because we've gotten so far afield from that over the years. And we're back there and they're meeting with success, and it's gonna have a payoff. It's gonna take a while, but it's happening. This year, we have 35 teachers receiving intensive training in this instructional delivery model. The way it works is one day every month is spent on theory. Subsequent days are spent applying their knowledge in classrooms across the district. We're going to continue that partnership throughout the summer and all of next year. So the hope is that within the next year to year and a half, we're going to have all of our elementary teachers trained to do this, and it's amazing. So I just have to say, I could cry. I'm so excited about it. Kathy knows that. This is my thing. And then just lastly, I just want to mention, you all have a green folder. It's for you to take home and read when you have nothing else to do. We've received some more positive press on our home visiting program. So I just wanted to kind of compile it all in one place for you to have. There's a couple of articles where we've been mentioned. We were very excited. We were a little nervous, but very excited. A couple weeks ago, the Friday before the long weekend, I got a call from somebody at the State Department to say, oh, we're going to send a video crew to your district on Wednesday, and they're going to film some of your home visitors. Can you please get everybody together? And I was like, but it's Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and there's no school Monday, and how are we going to pull this off? But we did. And they came, and they were lovely, and they made a little movie about us. And then there was a press conference in Harvard the next day, and we were not able to get there, but I'm told that somebody at the press conference gave us a shout out and said, we just want to acknowledge all the bold work that's been happening in Torrington around home visiting. And so that's a strategy too, when we look at this and we think about getting families involved, it's so important. We were here last night working on our Portrait of the Graduate initiative, and actually that came up, that if we can engage families in all of this, that's also going to work. So we have a lot going on, and I'm pretty excited about it. So, yeah.
Maybe I used to have a conversation, but I don't think about the teachers. I think the teachers should have a full day of just teaching. And I hope they don't think that, at least the things I push back on. I think we have policies in place, let's say, so that the teachers, if they're followed, the teachers have to worry about nothing other than teaching. And that, of course, they don't oppose the consequences. It's the administration. Whatever way we can do, fix it so that the teachers just teach, not worry about phones, not worry about computers, not worry about anything else, is what I think I've been talking about for 5 years. We're getting there, I think, but I don't think any of the discipline issues, at least I didn't read it as a teacher issue. So,
oh, no, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry, Gary, if it came out that way. What I meant was kids are not as excited about school as they may have been many years ago, because the outside world is very stimulating, right? So, I hear parents say, getting my kid to school is sometimes it's a little bit of a struggle because they'd rather be on their video games, or there's a lot of competition for their attention. That's what I meant. So sitting in a classroom, they're thinking about other things,
And I think that what I'm trying to do anyway, I think most people just eliminate the distractions. While they're in school. Out of school, we can't do anything. Also, look for that. But,
That's coming.
anyway,
That's a segue to next month, or end of the month.
I know, I'm just kidding.
Questions? So amazing, amazing. The New York Times, a town like Torrington, making it to the New York Times is pretty incredible. So thank you to everyone involved.
Very exciting.
Yeah, that's great. Special education update.
Hi, guys. So glad to see you all. I'm happy to be back. I just want to give a shout out to Steve Barton, who did an amazing job. So I really didn't need to come back. He has it all set. But I just wanted to see everybody again. So he had to leave, unfortunately, but I told him I was giving him a shout out. And also the supervisors and really my department as a whole, because we've been hit kind of hard, as the whole state has, with some shortage areas. And it's been really challenging for our teachers and our paras to, get the job done sometimes, but I could not be prouder of how much everybody steps up every day. And I felt like when I was out, everybody even did more. Taking on leadership opportunities among themselves to teach each other, whether it's CT SEDS, our new system, or, different strategies to help each other, really some nice collaboration in my department. So really proud of them. I am all the time, but this was great. As far as our numbers go, things are, you could see, still pretty much status quo. The only areas where there was an increase was in pre-K, and that's just every time a child turns 3, if they qualify, they're in. And also, if you look at our 18 to 22 year program at East, we went up by 1, but we also went down by 1 on the outplaced for 18 to 22. So we continue to work really hard on improving the program over, at East, so that people want to come to us rather than going to different community 18 to 22 year programs. You can see the prevalence. Steve had said, I guess there was a question about the state prevalence. And so you can see here, the latest number that we can get at this point is 21-22, and the state was 16.4. We, in January, are at 14.6. That's pretty much been consistent, running around 14% for well over a year now. And you can see our DERG, we're really doing very well compared to our DERG. And if you went back to when they first arrived, we were the top of the DERG. So I'm pretty proud of the fact that we're 4% lower than our DERG. So that's, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over the bottom. That is, someone had asked about the paras, the number of paras that we have total, the numbers that are in programs. So I have all that together. I also thought it would be helpful to see how many vacancies we currently have been working to fill, though we have some good news about that. We've been working really hard and thinking outside the box, but it's a little bit better. But maybe Kim should report really on this part. And then if you have further questions about the special ed piece, I can kind of jump back in at that point. Is that okay, Fiona?
Yeah.
If you want to ask any questions about Laura's.
Do you want questions on this, or do you want Kim to go and then we'll ask questions?
Okay, great. So I guess we'll start with like the vacancies, and you can see, as always, I've given you what was on the report last month and what's on this month's report. So our special ed teachers, we continue to struggle to find candidates, but I think we have a couple of people that they're going to be interviewing. So I think we've been able to recruit some candidates, and hopefully we'll have some movement on that for next month. The paraprofessionals, as Laura mentioned at last month's board meeting, there was a question for some detail. So in particular, if you look at the special ed numbers, so you can see there's 9 special ed paras, there's 3 behavior technicians. And so that reflects what's the detail that's on Laura's report. So if you want to talk about I think the question last month was, how many total paras do we have? How many are in programs? How many are not in programs? And then where are the vacancies at in relation to that number? So Laura and I work together so that she has that detail broken down on her report, but it aligns with what's on my overall report. We did fill just today one of the behavior technician positions. So that person accepted and will be coming on next week. We also filled the safety and security associate position, but it is an internal candidate from a special ed para, so it will add a vacancy to that, but we are working on that. With respect to the other positions, we're continuing to work on those. The cafeteria workers and the custodians, we're filling those positions, but they tend to be getting filled with internal transfers, so it's one person moving to another. So the vacancy is still there, but we really have had movement on it. We've just been following the contractual process. If what Laura was referencing that we have some news on is that Laura has done a really excellent job, and I'll let you talk a little bit about it, but I'll just kind of set the context. Because of the fact that we've been struggling with our substitute bill rates, Laura has been working on partnering with some other organizations to provide that kind of a service, particularly for the special ed paras. And she has worked with an organization that will be able to help support some of our needs and possibly provide us with people that we could interview to be able to hire for permanent positions in alignment with our contractual process. So they've interviewed quite a few people from that organization, and I think we're gonna have 4 people.
Yes, so we have 4 people that are going to be interviewed at the school level with the necessary members. And we're hopeful that these 4 will be able to come on board as our permanent paras. So that's exciting. We are battling a little bit of an issue with the salary. I've had several people say just can't do that. So that was a bit of an issue. However, I worked with the agency and was able to get the hourly rate down for their contracting. And it looks like I'm going to be able to bring 5 long-term subs in to act as paras for the remainder of the year, unless we get other people that apply for permanent positions. I do have another person who is now interested in a permanent position. So we could be in good shape with 10, people that we've been looking for. So that's pretty much right where we need to be. So at least I'm happy about that. And like Kim said, we hired a fantastic RBT today. Can't wait for her to start. She's going to be great. We still need 2 more of those. And I'm going to talk to Kim tomorrow, and maybe we have to look a little bit differently at just the job description and what we're expecting, and possibly the training I do, bringing them on more like of a behavior tech, and then doing more of the training once they're in the role. And I might get some more applicants from my internal paras. The problem with that is that I need to fill those para positions again, but we're getting there. So I was really proud at the beginning of the year. We were one of the few districts in the entire state that started fully staffed in special ed. And then I came back and I'm like, oh my gosh, how do we have all these openings? So, but we're working on it and we're getting there. So that's exciting. And we need that because our people are working so hard. And everybody's doing the best they can, but it's really hard when you're short staffed. So.
And we'll continue to cast the net to recruit for permanent fills for those vacancies, to send out to all of our pathways and our avenues that we have for recruiting candidates. As you know, I think I mentioned it about, next month, we're going to be talking more about a possible change to our substitute, vendor that we're using. So I think we're trying to look at ways to do what we can to improve the situation. It's a struggle for everybody across the state, but we really do want to keep trying to do what we can to make change and find ways to do it. So you can see the fill rates for December and our year-to-date fill rates and our December absences. You can see we're a little bit higher compared to our year-to-date. So we'll be, continuing to move not in the direction we want to be moving in. It's that season though, it's the winter season, colds, all of that stuff. For the HR initiative updates, again, I was talking about the new vendor. I'm excited that we have 10 student teachers for spring, which is really excellent. We have one in every school at least. The high school has 4, which is like huge because sometimes it's difficult to get secondary candidates, and I'm so excited that we were able to do that. 2 of our student teachers that we had for the fall have been hired as substitutes for us starting in January. So that's always exciting. And we're gearing up for job fair season. We're registered for the University of Bridgeport for the Ed Week virtual fair. And yesterday I registered for the UConn NEAG School of Education job fair. So that's always a good one. With respect to retention, we have scheduled our HR site visits for February. And so that was incredibly successful when we did it in November or in December. And so Tahina is actually at the middle school tomorrow. So they start tomorrow and we have our dates set out for the whole month. So we'll be doing that. And then as far as wellness goes, the Eating for Wellness event on the 23rd was postponed because of the weather. So that will be rescheduled for March 6th. Thank you to Dr. Buchanan and her team for adjusting for that for me. I appreciate that. We had the stress management event this past week at Forbes. In February, we're doing Dig into Dark Chocolate, and that's like a 3-hour kind of free flow event where people can just come and go as they please, and they'll get a demonstration from a dietitian on like the history of chocolate and the benefits of dark chocolate. And there's all kinds of cool stuff. So that's going to be happening at Torrington. And then for tax season, we're doing a 2-part financial well-being webinar for our people to go to. And that actually, I sent out the flyer for that and I got a lot of positive feedback on that. So I think that one's going to be really appreciated. And then we have our walking challenge and a virtual wellness fair. And then on the back, as always, you have the comparison between our Kelly Services subs and our Torrington Public Schools subs. So you can see that of our filled jobs, 31.4% of the teachers are filled by Torrington Public Schools staff, and 42.2% of the paras are filled by Torrington Public Schools staff. And then you have our overall staff turnover so far year to date.
Questions?
Maybe this has been asked before, and I'm sure it has, but is there a comparison for our absentee rate versus other schools in our DIRTs, or even just the fill rates?
The fill rates are comparable. Everybody's between 50 and 60% right now. So our 52% is about year to date where everybody is. So that's been pretty tough. As far as absences go, that's a little bit high, but not by much. The average is about between 9.5% to 10%. So for our teachers, we're pretty much right where everybody is. The paras are a little bit high.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question on the paras.
Sure.
I just want to go back to that. I think I was the one that asked for the breakdown as how many were. I'm just wondering, like, I look at the numbers for some of the schools and I see there's, well, for instance, I'll pick on the elementary ones, because I know that better. It seems like, and I know that the special programs require much more support. But when I look at the numbers and I take the total and I subtract the number from program paras, I'm just wondering how the other paras, say for Vogel Wetmore, 14, it looks like are the paras for the classrooms. How are they being used this year? Like, are they attached to a small group, attached to a classroom?
So you're talking about the 13 that would not be programmed, yes?
The 13 or the 14, yeah, that
Yeah,
are in
yeah.
the program.
So so there's 14 in the program, so they're assigned to primarily, there's some one-on-one,
Right,
but
right.
whatever is needed. As far as the other ones,
Yeah,
they are doing a combination.
okay,
Well, really, it's a lot of different things.
okay.
So they may even be one-on-one
Mhm.
with a child who's not in the program. They may be traveling with that child, going to the regular classroom, going back to the resource room with them. They may be working with a small group in the resource room. pulling them out of a larger room if they need more small group instruction. They may be working with them in a small group in the classroom. They may be floating within the classroom. They may be implementing a behavior plan that's been put in place for a child, like a reinforcement plan. So they're sitting with the child, and whenever the child's responding positively, they might be reinforcing. They may be taking some data if needed for the teacher on the classroom behaviors or other things going on. So it's really a combination. They are assigned because of the needs of the IEP. So it's not, well, teacher A is going to get 3 and teacher B is going to get 4. There are special education paras, even the resource ones, and they're assigned because of the needs of the children. So we really look, and the supervisors work really hard with the principals at the end of the year to look and see every single child. Where would be the best place for this child to go and this child to go? Well, if we put these 3 children in the same classroom, this para goes into that classroom a good portion of the time with that one student, and is therefore able to support the 3. So that's kind of how we try to do it. It's been more of a challenge this year because we're short and
Right.
people everywhere are short. So that's hard because, then of course it's, well, we have to respond to the needs of the IEP first. So we are in compliance, because if the child's supposed to have that support and they're not getting it, then we're denying FAPE. So that's when I start to get nervous, we have to fill these because we're not able to provide FAPE. And we're trying to finagle things the best we can so that we are meeting people's IEPs, but it's just a challenge.
So those 13 or 14 could be assigned as a one-on-one or to 3 students or to 5 students.
Yeah, and it's usually not one thing. So even the one-on-one, it's really not best practice
Right.
to put the same person with the
Right.
same kid all the time, because then that pair is out, and guess what? It's gonna be a really fun day with that child. So, and it's also draining on the para to do that one thing the whole day. So it's usually a combination. The way that we set it up is they are assigned to one special education teacher. So she's the one who, her caseload, that para is kind of working with the children on those caseload and push into those rooms and whatnot.
I know we're short, and I guess my reason for asking that question is because we keep talking about the challenges in the classroom. And we all know that it's not children with special needs who are causing all of the challenges. And when hearing the discipline reports and such, I'm just wondering, do we have enough paras? We can't fill the positions we have.
No.
Right.
But I just think that that's a factor as well. And so a lot of what's happening is that many of the behaviors, in the classrooms are impacting, as Fiona said.
And
our
every single year, and I've said this before, I don't set up our program every year. These are our programs, and these kids have to fit in these programs. We look at every kid and we decide, okay, what does this kid need? I tell them, okay, pretend we don't have programs. If we didn't have any programs at all, and you could just pick what this kid needed, what would it look like? And then we put it all up and we it's a science, but we kind of try to figure out what do we need. If I feel I need more paras, I think you guys have figured out by now, I pretty much say what I need to say. So if I felt like I needed more paras, I'm gonna come to you and say, we really need more paras. Right now, I think we set ourselves up with the correct number of paras. However, we can't get them, so that's our issue. But I am hoping that within a couple of weeks, we're gonna be in better shape. Not permanently, because like I said, some of these people are just gonna be long-term subs for the rest of the year. But we'll start out early in the spring, and hopefully we will be able to start next year like we did this year, ready to go, so.
Questions?
It's a quick question, but now that you're back, we can ask a question about where we go from here, I guess, or where you go from here. You know, that's somewhere else. But going into the budget, you're looking at what I think Board of Finance will be looking for is where we can take this, where you can take the improvements we've made down the road, where we can reallocate resources if it's possible, to reinvest the money in other programs, maybe outside, the SPED, it might be into tutoring or whatever other, things you're thinking of, or the superintendents might be thinking of to bring more in-house or,
Yeah.
you know.
I think we're kind of starting to do that a little bit with the, I don't know, the seesaw or whatever you want to say about the RBTs and the reflection room and the alt program, and that's not SPED. But yet we're providing the supports. We're having meetings, I mentioned this before, we're having meetings, with the building leadership and going over like this data. And we're talking about, this kind of data and, okay, how many are our SPED kids? How many are not? How many are the alt program? And what can our BCBAs do to make it better? They're not just there for special ed. So yeah, usually BCBAs are brought into districts specifically for children with autism. And they really only spend time in those kinds of programs. But they're just so knowledgeable that, we really, now that we're lucky to have 3, nobody has 3. So now that we have that, we really want to be able to expand on it, and we are. In the February PD, the BCBAs are going to be working on a couple of professional development things for the teachers, not just SPED, but hopefully the gen ed teachers too, on more specific ways to avoid injury in a classroom, but also understanding children that maybe don't fit so neatly into a package or a category. So for example, we might have a child with autism, but he's very high functioning. And yet he's got extreme behavioral issues. So then we sit there thinking, okay, well, what do? Do we put him in the Voices program because he has autism? Do we put him in the Thrive program because he's got the behaviors? Okay, well, maybe we put him in the Thrive program. The problem is, a lot of times he doesn't have the social understanding of what's going on, and he's getting himself more into trouble with the behaviors because he doesn't understand. But if we put him in the Voices program, many of those children are lower. Some of them may be nonverbal. So sometimes it's hard. We kind of have to try to figure out where's the best place, and they're children, and they're not black and white. And so we think that the best thing we can do is really work with the teachers on how to understand these kids that may be presenting really different behavioral challenges. So the BCBAs are going to be working on that professional development. So we really are kind of trying to bridge out and do that the best that we can.
Something else I meant to ask a long time ago, because some of the things you hear, I hear, I know everybody does, is the integration in the classroom with some kids. I think 80%, 90% of the kids are regular learning kids, and the other 5 or 7% are kids that have emotional issues or whatever the state requirements are. Is there ever a way? Is there a way to somehow figure out how to minimize the disruptions? Is there another way to teach the children? Is there a better way? Are we doing it that way because that's the best we have right now? I don't know the state's.
So we're constantly re-examining that. And again, that's where our BCBAs come in. As far as disruption, if it's a child that's identified, we work really, really hard on trying to figure out what's going on and trying to improve that behavior. Sometimes we can't. And as great as we've done with reducing our outplaced population, there are times that we have to outplace children because we cannot meet their needs. And so it's really a matter of what else can we try? What else can we try? Oh, what if we do this? Let's collect data on this. And then we come back. And if it's not going to work, then we need to have that child removed, because yes, it's what does he need? Yes, we have to provide faith, but we also have to remember we're a public school, and this is what we need to do to educate everybody. So we're always looking at that. And I'm constricted a little bit by the law because it does require, we always look at the least restrictive environment. But I think that we do that, and then if we cannot meet it in our setting, then we recommend that the child be placed.
I went to 2 classes last year, just sit in on. I don't know how the teachers deal with some of the disruption. I don't know how they do it. Even if it's only 2 or 3 kids, I mean, it's the chatter, it's the talk, and the kids trying to learn. I don't know how they do it. I know they do a great job. It seems almost impossible. But you obviously learn, so. You're
Sure,
thinking about it.
I'm on it here.
Any other questions? Any other questions? I just have two. Is there any studies about the BCBA's and working on behavioral plans for non-autistic kids?
Oh, yeah, we have tons. Not just for non-autistic, we have behavior plans for other
No, I'm
special.
saying like in their training to doing the developmental plans for non-autistic children.
So I'm confused. I don't know what you're asking me. So,
Well, you were saying that the training is mostly with autistic children, but we have them working with all of
Yeah.
our children, so I'm
yeah,
just curious.
yeah, no,
what
so the
data is.
training that they're gonna put together, we're seeing the need for more information for general classroom teachers, for special ed teachers. So that's what they're putting together. As far as developing behavior plans, the BCBA's do that, not the RBTs. The BCBA's develop the plans, and our social workers are trained to also develop those plans. And there are 2 different kinds of plans. There are BIPs, behavior intervention plans, which are only developed after an FBA has been completed, a functional behavioral analysis. And so that's an assessment. So it needs to be recommended, there needs to be permission for it. We typically do those just for special ed children. However, we have done them on 504s and whatnot before. So, for example, before we're gonna change a child's placement, we have to do one of those. But in addition to that, we have behavior plans, like behavior service plans that any child in the school may have. And any of the special ed people, including the BCBA, are often involved with the development of those. So those are plans that they will develop that can be implemented right within the classroom, getting the input of the general classroom teacher, what will work for you in here. Sometimes having an RBT go in and model it in the classroom. Maybe a para is in there helping to implement it. So that can go on all the time, and it does go on all the time for all students.
And my other question was for Kim on these wellness initiatives. How are the vendors selected that provide these services for all of these things that we're doing?
So most of them are through Cigna, through our wellness fund. So they partner with an organization that supports their wellness initiatives because all of this is funded through our wellness funds. So they set it up through Wellness Concepts was their partner. And they find the vendor for us or find whoever's gonna come and that person comes out. We have a few internal people, like one of our teachers does the yoga in the spring. So, because and that's a very popular thing. So there's a couple of them that are like internal Torrington people, but most of them are through Wellness Concepts.
So is there a disclaimer through Wellness Concepts or Cigna? So I'm just gonna use the financial wellness. So if that person gives advice that turns out to not be beneficial to our employees and it ends up creating a tax liability, or
I can check on that, but I don't think they're giving any personal advice because it's a webinar that is not necessarily. So I don't think they're gonna answer personal financial questions for everybody, but I can check on that for you, sure.
I mean, so my concern was in the presentation, they had that they were gonna discuss 401k loans. So we have a 403b plan, not a 401k plan. So I just wanna, if they're giving advice on like the taxation of that kind of thing, I think that we need to make sure that if they're providing the service, that we don't have liability for bad advice that they might give.
Yeah, I can check on that.
And I'm not saying they're gonna give bad advice, I'm just saying I don't know what kind of advice.
I actually don't think they're giving advice at all. I think they're only talking about law and facts, but I can double check.
Right, but if you're talking about 401k loans to a municipality that doesn't qualify for a 401k, that's just a little concerning to me, so I just want to make sure that we're covered if they were to give advice that could be misleading. And then I guess we should, I'm also a little bit, just want to make sure that we have, a lot of these people are going to generate business from these type of events.
Okay.
So maybe if we significantly just weigh in that we don't have to provide opportunities, like we don't have to put this out there, to see. Can we just pick from that list, I guess is my question.
I'm not understanding. So, from what list?
Through this consortium with Cigna, when we bring these people in, can we just do that if they're going to end up generating business from that?
Okay, so what am I asking? I don't understand. Sorry.
And this might be more for business, and we can talk offline.
Okay.
But just, because if we have 5 other financial advisors saying we gave access to 1,200 people, that they eventually generate
If they
business
get
from,
clients.
right? I'm not sure how that works. I don't think it's as big an issue for chocolate and yoga, but
Yeah.
Financial planning is like a huge industry and has a lot of money in it, so I don't know. It
We
might
can
not be a
check into
problem,
it.
I'm just.
Yeah, I can check.
Any other questions?
Right on.
And then do you pick from a list that Cigna has which ones you want, or?
We picked the events from their catalog of events, and then our Cigna partner
Picks
gets just tells us who is coming to do the event.
So you don't have a choice as to.
So like the person that did the sleep health one is like a retired person. They're not looking for any business or anything. So I think that's what all these people are, but I don't know that for sure. So.
Any other questions?
Do we pay for these services?
I think you asked that last time. It all comes from our wellness fund. That's part of our benefits package. So it's included in what we already pay for as part of our benefits organization.
Even for the vendors that are outside of the Cigna,
It's all paid for by Cigna from that fund.
so Cigna, so the people we pick that are not on the Cigna list are then compensated
Correct.
directly
They
from
said
Cigna?
they, like the teacher that I'm referencing, like has an LLC and Cigna reimburses that person.
Any other questions? Okay, monthly financials.
Sure. Before I get started, Joanna, to what you were just talking about, I don't think they can ask for business because we already have, is it Horace Mann, they're 403B. So, we would have to stick with them. But
Yeah,
they couldn't
no.
offer.
So what I'm looking at it more is it's the personal finances that they're gonna want to get.
Well, I'll sit in one of them.
Yeah.
And I'll report back to you. So, but I think I know what you're saying. And I'll find out. So the monthly financials, they're a little dated at this point, matter of a couple of points. So today being the first, I ran the reports and just put it together, which you'll see in a couple of weeks at the budget committee meeting. So we're still trending the same way. We're in the latter part of the year now, or this report reflects 6 months. So we're in the back half of the year. I don't have anything that's of real concern to me right now. The areas that we are looking for are looking at on almost a weekly basis is Mr. Barlow and I are meeting continuously to see if we have any maintenance issue and making sure that we have all our supplies and everything we're purchasing. Thankfully, nothing has broke of any significance this year so far, which is really good. The other wild card that we have that we know about is special education, but I'm in contact with them weekly basis also, and they're doing a really great job with the tuitions and all the big dollar items. And we'll see those reflected in the next committee meeting because we pay those on a semi-annual basis. So we're starting to see them come off the encumbered line and into the expense line. So, if anybody has any particular questions on any line items, I'd be happy to answer them. But other than that, I think we're shaping up pretty good thus far this year. Again, there's nothing really I would point out as a concern at this point. And also, we're full swing into budget season right now, so that's where my attention is very focused. So if I can't answer any question you have tonight, I will get back to the chairperson with the answer.
Anyone have any questions? Jeff?
Just a quick question, is the certified staff surplus, is that tied together with the retiree insurance? I'm guessing that more people retired than we expected last budget season. Which
Yeah,
gives us a,
no, that's a great question. So I've been thinking of a way to do that, and I've actually spoken to Mr. Aram. So that's kind of a mathematical formula. So what I'm really doing is I'm taking the month, the prior month. I'll give you the quick, but I divide it by the amount of pay periods, because each month has 2 pay periods, other than 2 months that have 3 pay periods. And then I'm just extrapolating that out to what it would be for the year, minusing it to the budget. So that's a mathematical formula that's getting us that number right now. But I'm pretty confident based on that formula that that's what we're running at right now. In fact, it just slightly went down when I did the numbers with January numbers in it this morning. So that formula is working, and we are trending the way I would expect at this juncture of the year.
5280 is the insurance is expected then? It just seems that was the only category for insurance that was off budget significantly.
Which one are you looking at?
Retiree insurance.
5280.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So what that is our retirees pay for their insurance. So each month you would see that reduced because they're actually paying it. So those are the credits going in there to offset the expenses, so to speak. That's just the way that we budget that line item. So it looks like we're over budget, but we're really not. So
It's just premiums coming back.
exactly each month. So each month you'll notice that going down.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Policies. Just, Ellen, my understanding that 5003, 5028, and 5031 policy was moving forward, but with no optional languages. That's correct. So if people want to discuss those in a bundle, I think it would be helpful from a time standpoint. So it's the shipment policy, taking out all optional language. Correct? Any questions on those three?
I do have one question on 5028, the confidentiality and access to education records. So at the end of the policy, under the legal references, it references the State Department of Education, this is on page 29 and 30. State Department of Education guidance on civil rights protections and support for transgender students. And then it also references State Department of Education guidance on civil rights protections and support for transgender students frequently asked questions. There is nothing in this document that pertains to transgender students. So I'm going to suggest that we remove those from the references because they're not relevant to this document.
You want me to talk?
Yeah.
So the guidance from the attorney was that we are still bound by the law with respect to that, with implementing this policy. So not to remove any of the legal references, because we had asked based on the request. Our guidance from our attorney was that we should not remove any of the legal references, because as a district, we are still legally bound to follow those laws. Even if we don't include that optional language, the interpretation of the policy still affects students under those guidelines, and we still have to follow the law.
Well, of course, we have to follow the law, but this is not referencing law. This is referencing state guidance. And some of the content of that state guidance is actually does not align with some of the what is specified in this policy.
I'm just telling you what the attorney recommended, so the board
I think it may be helpful to consider that the legal references attached to Board of Education policy are just the foundational basis that an attorney would use to argue on behalf of that policy in litigation. It doesn't actually mean anything as far as the policy goes. So if our attorney is telling us, hey, you should leave this in here because if I ever have to defend you in court, I want you to leave it in there, I think it's a good reason to leave it in there. It's my 2 cents.
I don't understand. legal, but are we in conflict here with the state versus what we local, or is that just something we're attaching? I'm just curious. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, there's certain laws that we still have to follow regardless.
Correct, but there's no law that says that we have to have a policy based on that guidance.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The law does not state that we have to have a policy specifically based on that guidance.
That's the State Department of Education guidance versus a law.
So then-
However, to go back to what Ed was saying, I think the lawyer is saying it's important to adhere to your State Department of Education as well as any laws that would protect you. So
So
I
the-
think that's, I mean, we can ask her again, or we can get a statement from her
I mean,
referencing this.
the issue that, when I read through these and read through the guidance, the issue that crops up in both of those things is the idea of changing student records. So in this policy, according to FERPA, a minor student does not have the right to change their student records, meaning name, things like that, unless they are 18 or emancipated, unless there's parental consent. The state guidance says something different. But the state guidance also says in the guidance that the law on that topic is unclear. So we know that what's in this policy is dictated by FERPA. So my suggestion is to remove the guidance because the guidance in the relevant portion is actually contradictory to the content of this policy. So that's why I'm asking. if we can remove it.
Tess, which paragraph are you referring to?
What's that?
Which paragraph are you referring to? On the bottom of page 29?
I'm referring to in the section that talks about the legal references. It references the state guidance relative to transgender students, but this policy does not talk about transgender students, which is why I suggested that we remove it. Because the guidance document actually does not completely align with what this policy says. And I think it's confusing.
More than a few confused, maybe we should get clarity from.
Yeah, we can get a legal
Hear
statement.
everybody back here. It's really hard.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I suggested that because there is some confusion, that we get some clarity from our attorney.
So how about we
What's the concern? What's the concern in leaving it in there?
That's what Jess was explaining. and I
No,
don't-
so my concern, Sue, to answer your question is that this policy as written, so there's been an issue nationally and within Connecticut of students changing their names and their, socially transitioning in school without parental knowledge.
Uh-huh.
And the FERPA policy seems to indicate that that would not be permitted because it says that a student cannot change their name in their records without parental consent unless they're 18 or emancipated. The state guidance says something different. The state guidance has a different interpretation of FERPA, and the state guidance document says specifically in the document that the law is unclear in that area. So my concern is that our policy be, contain references that support the contents of the policy. That is my question. If the board does not support that, then, you guys can leave it as is.
What if our lawyers who wrote this policy, as Kim says, recommends that we keep this in so that they can represent us if something should arise? They know that's iffy, but they'll be able to represent us. Why take it out? They're recommended that we keep it in, and I think we should keep it in.
John and Gary?
And that is exactly why the lawyers want it kept in, because if the state guidelines themselves say the law is unclear, it's a playground for a lawyer. And it's just the Wild West, once a lawyer gets hold of something like that.
I did not take the sides of it. I just don't want to be sued. I don't think the board wants to be sued. It's a really difficult topic, and I would agree we should get clarity on it, because I have lots of lawyers and everyone has a different opinion on uniform lawyers. I mean, nothing's clear, and this is even less clear.
So is everyone comfortable with having the attorney look at it and we'll get something for policy next week, policy meetings, right? You're not-
Yeah, I agree, and I want to make it clear. This
Okay,
this
well,
is
let's
gonna
drop
be
roll
not
then,
interesting.
because it's, I'm not gonna call on you first. John,
I see nothing wrong with waiting on this. We've gone along without this particular policy for a while. We can wait longer.
Ellen's a no. Yes, no.
Wait,
No,
Don't wait.
don't wait.
Okay, we're waiting, there's no rush.
Just,
Yeah, I would vote tonight if we took it out.
are you?
So
do
if
you
the
want
options are
to-
vote tonight the way it is, or wait, then I would say wait.
Okay.
Those are my options.
No, I'm not interested in going over it again with our lawyer. We've already given us advice on the same topic.
I would follow the attorney's advice.
So you would not wait and
I would not wait.
go tonight?
Soup.
Oh,
If we already consulted with our attorneys and got an opinion, I would not wait. So I'd vote no.
so then I'll go for a vote tonight. All right. Any other questions on any of those other ones? Dress code. So in your package is a proposed dress code. And then there's where they put explanations for things. So I don't know if you want to explain it. Sue went to the administration and they went through some of the items. So there's some commentary on things, reasoning why that may be acceptable or not. You know,
Yeah, just the process.
the process.
So just to give some context to what's there, and to remind me to share with you basically why the process are there. Students wear their coats, jackets, they carry their backpacks. Very few students use their lockers at the high school or the middle school. I think we had mentioned this even when we were talking about building construction. So they just feel comfortable doing that. And it doesn't seem to be an issue. So I just wanted, that's a possible cross out for the board to consider. The next one, head coverings. So basically, students wear bandanas or headbands, even kids in elementary school wear headbands. That kind of stuff. Obviously, you don't want to have something that's covering their faces. So the big issue for Shipman was they actually added this or created this whole policy based on the protected hairstyles because there was a very contentious legal battle that happened in Connecticut, whether you remember or not. It just, they added, that's why they created a dress code policy.
What's a protective hairstyle?
Wearing like the dreads or wearing something that might be uniquely connected to
Okay.
a certain cultural
Religion or culture? Okay.
ethnic group. So then C is the A and B combined. So as I said, most students do not wear lockers. But wear which Mars, so floors or sunglasses. Kids usually don't wear sunglasses, but whatever, metal belt buckles. Seems very kind of, yeah, kind of like a more, I don't know, not to attack any states, very for country or maybe like Texas, where we don't have oversized belt buckles that kids are wearing. Spikes, or studded bracelets, I don't think for this area have been in style since probably the eighties. No offense to anybody from the eighties. And then we have HIJK. We do actually have tank tops and sleeveless shirts that we have tank tops that are part of even our uniforms, athletic uniforms, so that becomes a little complicated. The see-through clothing obviously is not acceptable. The shorts, mini skirts, or pants. Dress code overall is complicated, but even reveal the upper thigh. We have track uniforms that reveal upper thigh, cheerleading uniforms, volleyball uniforms. We have to, if we're talking about those things, students at the high school do wear those for like pep rallies and things like that. So we have to put distinguishing language in these. Right, or you just say, okay, those kids, they only wear them for a pep rally, but then they change or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I'm just raising that. When you talk about dress code, it's not like a black and white, unless you just go all uniforms and then you know what they're going to be wearing all the time. So there's just kind of this woven kind of little bit of craziness. And once again, we're back to the backpacks and kids don't use their lockers. So that was just to kind of give the overview and some of the complications of trying to establish a student dress code. And I think Jason had spoken at the beginning of the meeting about the difference between the dress code policy from 2019, 2020 to 2022, 23. So I'll pass that around again. I'm sure that you could now wallpaper your walls with this copy, but you get to see yet another version of the changes from one or the other, just so you have it for reference.
And I'd like the board to focus on a policy and additions or deletions to the policy.
I've well, one that I think is super important in this section B here, it should read approved coverings, comma, except those worn as a part of a student's religious practice or belief. Because right, as it's written right here, you're explicitly banning those. So we want to do the opposite. So as a housekeeping thing, and then it is, and this would be more just maybe this is a nitpick, you tell me, but it is the phrasing that our attorneys advise us to use protective hairstyles or protected hairstyles.
They use the word protective in their original.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I know, sorry.
Interesting.
And yeah, so we tried to use their verbiage, but
Right, and this is maybe again a sort of weird nitpick. So I think everybody has a vague sense for we're looking at item M. Everybody has probably a vague sense of upper thigh as opposed to lower thigh. But you know, I remember distinctly when I was a student. You know, they had things like you can't have stuff above your knees, and they would measure it. Right, you know, this many inches above your knee. So I'm a little nervous about the definition of something like upper thigh, only because I think to the point that Mr. Lafreniere brought up, you can reach a point where like something that's very vaguely defined like that can end up being enforced differently across students of different demographics. So I think without an explicit and universally applied definition of something that's too short or too exposing, I think you're opening yourself up to the opportunity to treat students differently when you shouldn't.
Is this what Shipman gave us?
Yeah.
How many times we're gonna read the policies to death? Both Shipman policies, some Shipman policies. There's enough problems. I could read some things from teachers, but dress code. We're gonna have a dress code, or we're not gonna have a dress code. The vaguer we make it, the more difficult it becomes for the administration. As an alternative to this, is no uniforms. They did level protect, they work, inner city schools use them. Oh, you know, I don't know. I'm sorry, I said Shipman gave this to us. We'll go with our attorney, let's go with our attorney. We're gonna spend 5 weeks talking about nitpicking, but I'm happy with this.
Sorry, one more edit to that paragraph. Sorry, it's grammatical. It's not.
Ellen, do you mind if that goes and then I'll put it
No,
back
go
to you?
ahead.
Just really quick, it has to be head covering, this is item B, head coverings, comma, except those. Because we want to prohibit all head coverings except those things.
Got it.
Sorry, that was my
Yep.
half-baked correction. That's all.
Ed, do you want to do substitute teacher work?
Yeah.
I'm looking for subs.
No,
But I think that you're, yeah, because we were questioning the same thing. I actually think it is right the way it is, but it's wordy.
We're prohibiting. the
No, it
following.
says shall not be prohibited.
Prohibited. Because I asked about, what about yarmulkes? Because they're not
It's the
listed,
end of the sentence.
but
not
it
the
says
beginning of
may
the
not be
sentence.
prohibited.
They're part of a religious.
I read it the wrong way too.
Yeah, no, we just had that same.
Oh, right, shall not be.
Shall
not
be
You don't
prohibited.
need it. Okay, that's why. I was-
Yeah.
So I think it was
I just
right.
asked her the same thing, right.
You're right, so just, okay.
But I think we do need to add head.
Yeah, it's a little jumbled.
I got, yeah, it's
Uh,
done.
Both of us question the same thing, maybe we should rethink that word a little bit.
Yeah, it should still say it, except those.
This second, page 65 and 66, that has the lines through, this has been vetted through Shipman.
No, this was just presented to the board so that you could see the update of what's occurred. That's all,
So Shipman gave us this one.
correct?
Yes.
I have a few questions. So first on B, is the intent to prohibit all head coverings with the exception of approved coverings? Because the way it reads, I mean, like, I'm just trying to understand what we're trying to prohibit.
That's how I read it.
So no baseball caps, no hoods, no nothing,
No headbands.
no headbands. Okay. And what's,
So with that being said, I know that that's why that top part is actually, is not the headbands were not a no, because I think that even in elementary, they wear headbands, you know, to keep their hair back.
Right, but is this getting more towards the hat, a cap? Or a
Well, that's
hood?
what I
Yeah.
think. So then what do you cut off from that top? It becomes problematic, right? So, it opens up the discussion. What do you keep in and what do you take out? Which is why I think that a lot of this was more in the expectations at the site versus the board policy. Because then it changes with different styles as well. Just like the spiked and studded bracelets.
so could I suggest that the reason that I can think of two good reasons for kids not to wear things on their head. One is that it obscures their facial features and you can't see who they are on camera or in class. The second would be if it was representative of gang colors. Like, I think years ago, that was something that was a cause to say no bandanas. I can't think of any other good reasons specifically just to head coverings to say no to some of those other things. So I don't know, maybe if we settle on why would we want to rule out a head covering, that would help us decide which head coverings to rule out.
So
Is this change I have a couple of questions, but I guess since Jess was just talking about B. Is that by crossing that off, by the strike through, we're saying that those items are allowed?
they would
So,
be.
right,
allowed.
Yes.
They would be allowed. So bandanas, masks, headbands, visors, sweatbands, cap hoods, all of that would be allowed under this recommendation.
Yeah.
Yes?
No, none of those things would be allowed.
Be allowed.
No.
So the top of at the top, it says the Torrington Board of Education prohibits the following from where during the academic school day. And you crossed it off.
The other one's there too, Sue,
Oh, there's two
on
of
page
us.
63.
Yeah, look at,
Oh, okay, all
63.
right, 63,
63 is shipments.
Right,
Which is.
right, but the suggested change is removing, it's backwards, isn't it?
It's the same point.
It's saying it prohibits the following.
those are saying that those top ones would then be allowed.
Right, it's taking them off.
It'd be taking them off, so they would be allowed, but in the original one.
Right.
So I think what's additionally a little bit complicated is you have to be careful on the à la carte decisions because you could create a Title IX violation.
But Shipman wrote this.
No, but I'm saying if we go through the second one and say, okay, we don't care if people wear headbands, we don't care if they wear this, then it could.
Okay, that's not what I'm suggesting.
Boys versus girls or vice versa. So I think we just have to be
Right.
careful about that.
I think she's.
I'm not suggesting that. Can I just finish my thought for a second? As far as that goes, I'm back to at the top. My first observation is I'm not in agreement with with removing that. I don't think that they need to be wearing coats and jackets, and the fact that they don't use their lockers. We're spending how much money now on lockers? They need to start using their lockers. So that's one of the other thoughts that I had. And then back down to the bottom really quick, because I don't want to lose my spot again. But tank tops and sleeveless shirts, I guess that's fine, but do we run into the sports bra issue still with those in there? And then backpacks, a lot of the stuff that's removed due to the fact that a majority of students don't use their lockers, I think we need to consider putting back in is not a justification for removing it just because they don't use their lockers. It's a reason to get them using their lockers again. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm back to item B because it's come up another time. The issue here is that everything else in the policy is reading, right, as subsequent to the phrase prohibits the following.
Yeah.
So that's where my problem came in. So I'd say we should probably line it up that way. So it should read something like head coverings except those worn as part of a student's religious practice or belief, cultural tradition, or is required or permitted in conjunction with school district health and safety protocols, period. That's what it should read. I think that makes it explicitly clear. That is on the list of things that are banned with an exception. And then you have the protective hair styles phrasing right after. I think that's fine. But I just think that's how it should read to make it explicitly clear to Peter. I think 3 people now have been thrown off by the fact that it's been reversed. So to keep it in line, right, so that our dear readers and intended audiences can appreciate it on their first glance, that this is a continuous list of things that are prohibited, rather than a list of things that are prohibited with also one exception.
Len, then Gary.
I have 2 things. One, I think we should just send this back to policy and follow our normal protocol where any new policy goes to the policy committee first. We discuss all these changes in the policy meeting and then bring to the full board the draft of policy. We shouldn't be seeing this for the first time in the full board meeting. So if we follow protocol and this goes to policy, we discuss all these edits and waste our time in a policy meeting versus a full board meeting. Okay. Second, we talked about the dress code policy, which my constructive criticism comments were not taken too lightly apparently. And I apologize if I came off the wrong way when we talked about this in the policy meeting. Okay. If we implement this, what happens to the individual school? Again, it shouldn't be called policy, but they're guidelines. I think we said guidelines and policy.
Expectations.
Expectations. So what do we do?
So board policy supersedes procedures. So the board policy would have to.
So putting in guidelines about dress code at a particular school can send some confusion to people if they follow a Torrington Board of Ed policy.
So their guidelines would have to match the policy.
Okay, so then this would kind of have to be totally changed. Okay. I mean, with that said, we should be discussing about this in a policy committee meeting and not in a full board meeting. To protect everybody's time here. We shouldn't be really nitpicking about grammar and sentences about a policy in a full board.
So the board can decide to put this back to policy. Or the board can decide.
I mean, we still have a lot of agenda here, and I don't want to spend 20 minutes talking about
Yeah,
grammar.
it's completely up to the board how they want to handle it. Gary?
I don't understand how we can go back. The problem with dress code has been, there's too much, it's too vague, and nobody can decide who to challenge, who not to challenge. We're not challenging kids on their dress code because the policy isn't clear. The purpose of going to our attorney was give us a policy that's clear, that can address all ambiguity and make it clear what the administration and the teachers have to look for. I mean, to go to this other suggestion brings us back to where we are. You know, I'm good with what Shipman did. I thought the plan to bring this to the board was, this is what Shipman is suggesting. We discussed this once already, and we were going to go with Shipman's policy.
We never saw this in policy.
Well, they took out what we discussed. It wasn't a policy, it was subsequent policy.
The shipment version, we never saw that policy. This is the first time we're seeing it.
Right, no, I know. There was subsequent discussion at one other meeting about taking off. Just bring this forward. We can go back to policy. I'm just saying. How much leeway is there in our policy on dress code? I mean, we've gone from having a dress code. I have 6 kids that went there, you know, until 6 years ago. There wasn't really much of a problem with dress code. I think some kids got away with a lot, but it depends on who the student was. I mean, now, I can read you some of the messages from teachers and from city folk. I personally was in high school last year and the year before. It's awful the way kids are dressed. I can't blame the administrators because our policy sucks. You know, so either we have a policy that we can, not just this, a policy that has teeth that somebody can follow, or we don't have a policy. We go to uniforms. I mean, how often is this? How long is this going to go on? You know, many people like uniforms. I'm not saying I do. You know, my kids didn't like uniforms. They didn't wear uniforms, but they were told what to wear and they wore it. It's just amazing. We can waste so much effort and time and ignore what the public is complaining about and what many teachers complain about over and over and over. And probably administrators too. They just don't, I wouldn't blame it, don't want to bring it up. But let's give them a policy they can use. The second page, I don't get it. It eliminates all of our policy issues that have been brought up over and over. So,
All of this is just making Glenn's point that it's not ready for prime.
Correct.
Any other questions specific to the policy? Just
No, just I would support Glenn's suggestion that we send this back to policy. I have a lot more, I mean, I have some more input on changes or, you know, things, but I'll save all of that if we're gonna push it back to policy.
And that will be decided when we come to action items.
And this is intentional. I hope, maybe I can't ask the question, but what would be, have we ever asked the administrators and teachers what they would think about uniforms? I'm not saying what side I'm on. I know lots of parents who say they'd love to see uniforms because it makes it easier. The kids don't compete. They spend X amount of dollars a year. There's no concern about how they show up at school. Or do they not agree that uniforms would be good for students? Many inner city schools have them. They work well. Boca Tech had them. I'm not sure I'd like the uniform policy, but they had them. It eliminates more problems for the teachers and the administrators. Everything goes away. Anyway, I'd like their opinion.
We did do a survey.
Oh,
yeah.
that's-
Yeah,
I wasn't at the
yeah,
last
I
meeting. I
can
wasn't
bring
at that
it
meeting,
back. Yeah, and we could do an updated one, but I
Just
can
curious.
bring that to the next policy. Just those results.
I know some parents may not like it, some parents won't like it, but God, this thing's gonna spin out of control.
I think the challenge, just saying in defense of the staff and the administration who's trying, and for the teachers too. You know, when you're face to face with a student, and you say, take off your hood, or you say, you know, you've got to go change, whatever, they do. But then it changes when they get into the next class. It's the same thing that kids did when they left home. Home looked good, kids had their whatever intact. By the time they got to school, they were wearing something totally different. So it is really difficult it's not as easy as, okay, you've got your cell phone in a pouch. So it's just more complicated when it's clothing.
Why wasn't it?
I think
My
times have
kids went to
changed.
28.
But
Oh, we let them change. I can go to school.
Well, and I think COVID changed too what people wear, because our teachers
COVID's no
wear more relaxed clothing as well. So we can talk more about it, policy. I don't mean to
I don't-
derail us. I
yeah.
just
We don't want
wanted
to
share that.
circle around,
Yeah.
and this is why I said if it's
Hold on.
important to the board, it should be in the policy, because otherwise everybody's interpreting it, and that makes zero sense that people should be interpreting this.
And I think we have disagreements amongst ourselves, what the intent is that we want to put forward, just relative to this thing with head coverings. Are we allowing all head coverings or are we banning all head coverings? I mean, we don't even know, right? So maybe that secondary discussion will help us.
That's the problem with that, everything else.
Okay, so straw poll, so we know where we're going for action. Straw poll, who would like to move forward with shipment standard policy with no alterations? Just raise your hands if you're in favor of the policy without the crossouts.
I wrote
So what?
I would.
You would too? Sure. Okay. You're a no?
What, accept shipments policy as it is without any changes?
Correct.
I don't know. No.
Perfect. We don't over that. Okay. Accept this policy with the crossouts.
Sure.
Anyone for a yes? Raise your hand if you're a yes.
Sure, okay.
No. Okay, so we're gonna move this back to policy for next week. So if you're interested, be there. And everybody's also, we have to keep in mind, it's February. We can't be changing the dress code in April, so we've lost everybody at that point. Okay, so dress code is moving back to policy.
That will be decided in action items.
Yeah, well, we're just gonna, we'll move it when we get to action. Okay, fundraising activities. Who wants to cover this one?
I think the fundraising activities, the recommendation was just to update a form. One of our forms was,
Oh, I think the next two were also ones that we didn't have a policy that was different.
right,
Yeah.
but in the fundraising one, we just added our own form to it. That was the only difference. Otherwise, they were just boilerplate different policies. Yeah.
Fundraising proposal form. Proposed change.
Right. And there, we don't have this coming help for student athletes. So that was just- These are things that we do, but we don't have a policy to govern it. Yeah.
Any questions on the fundraising activity form edition?
And there's no shipment that covers these areas,
We looked at it at house. Those two.
the fundraising?
Yep.
Yep.
Questions on that one? And chemical health for student athletes. That's the shipment policy, because we don't have a policy and we're supposed to have a policy on that.
And again, there's no shipment that covers that. correct?
This is the
That is
shipment.
the
This is shipment?
Yes,
Just took the T on it.
because we didn't have one, but we're still doing. all
Marissa
those things.
already-
We were adhering to.
Formatted it in our.
Okay,
Right, it's all shipments language, and.
okay. We want to try and standardize on shipment where we can, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Is anybody, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Is anybody opposed to, instead of drips and drabs, we just implement shipment across the board and then we go back to each one and edit accordingly? Because this takes a lot of time.
Yeah, it's been suggested a couple of times, but hasn't gotten movement.
Numerous.
That would allow people to focus on the policies that they really want to focus on, but get all the statutory policies in place.
Yeah, I think you just end up at the same place where we are now, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're just starting from a different place, I suppose, but we're still gonna end up going through them and arguing about each one.
Yeah, but
So I'll be
But if
there.
our
I'll
concern
be there.
is, our current policies don't cover certain aspects, we have
Oh, the
an attorney
statutory
approved
policy.
Right, we're missing.
shipment policy in place
Sure,
to
yeah.
cover us, and then we can go back and edit accordingly.
If it's statutory, I agree. If it's a policy we have to have.
We don't have it. I don't think it's about covering us. I mean, the policy, we're looking for that policies that reflect what we want. And eliminate some of these vagaries, but statutory. Otherwise, it's, there's so many differences, what we want, what other schools want. This one came up because we don't have any solutions. It's been the last 6 or 7, 8 years probably. It's just-
Let's
Yeah.
push back to policy, the process for policy, and if others have interest in how we're gonna move forward in policy.
Yeah, let's bring the policy, let's evaluate how
policy
many
should
we have
discuss
left
this. Right, yeah.
and make an assessment.
Because really, they're going through right now, the crosswalk, or they just reverse the crosswalk and adopt all policies.
That's not something we could do
Good,
tonight.
not an agenda item, but
I think should be
Majority.
policies that are not legally required. Then we would probably want to discuss if we wanted to adopt them.
I think that's why they're doing the crosswalk. But it could mean that we're a couple of years away from having all the policies that we're legally required to have, I think is the concern.
I guess my
The
concern is
state
just
writes
by
us a letter
adopting
about it.
theirs, we know that we have everything we have to have, or should legally have.
I just realized I had it before.
And,
For them to be able to.
right, and then go back and fix or get rid of it. Well, no, but I mean, if we know what we have to have legally.
So,
I thought we talked about, maybe it was a couple weeks ago, accepting all of Shipman's policies as is for those that we don't have and just moving forward from there. Did we not talk about that?
We talked about it several times.
it is. I mean, I think the only way you could really do that, though, would be to accept all of Shipman's policies, which
Right.
precede any Torrington Board of Education policy that exists now. Because
No, not that. Just what about the ones that we haven't looked at or the ones that are statutory related?
that's why they're doing the crosswalk, right? So that information isn't available until they go through every series, look at, okay, for the 5,000s, these are all the policies we have. These are all the ones Shipman has. Where's the gaps? What are we missing? So the only way to avoid that crosswalk, which I think it has to be 4 years, 3 years that we've been going through the crosswalk.
Since I've been on the board, so it's coming up, that we started it
That's
like the
only way
first
it can
month,
be done.
right?
That way, unless you just adopt theirs and get rid of all of ours, and then go through theirs and say, I don't like this one, let's look at this one, let's look at that one. Otherwise, it's going to be 4 or 5 more years probably before you finish your crosswalk.
It would take longer because we have to
It'll
recross.
time start again.
You'd have to start again.
Yes.
It just, I mean, the other thing is that once we adopt a policy, this is our policy and our employees are expected to follow all of our policies. So if we were going to throw out our entire policy manual and adopt a completely new policy manual, that's a lot for people. People would now be obligated to familiarize themselves with the content of those policies. And that's a lot to ask. And then for us to go back through that and then say, oh, yeah, never mind, we actually don't want that one. You know, it's, you're jerking people around more, I think, than we are, even though doing it the way that it is taking a little bit longer. So maybe we could get an updated, like, State of the Union as far as our crosswalk goes. Because I do think, I mean, obviously, if a policy is legally mandated that we must have this policy, that's what we should be prioritizing. And a lot of them are discretionary or contain components that are discretionary, and that's where the conversation is.
So are we pushing this back to policy to decide if we're following the crosswalk or adopting the policies to bring it back to the board with a recommendation? Raise your hand if you'd like to do that.
I'm not
Well,
sure.
can I ask one more question?
Go ahead, Sue.
Ellen, I don't remember, it was when we if it was at a policy meeting, but one of the last recommendations you made, I think it was very specific about the breakdown of which ones to accept and which ones not to. Do you recall that conversation, that?
It was
Your
to not adopt any optional language, just to adopt the mandatory language.
Right. That was,
Okay, right, okay. All right, I just wanted to clarify that before we straw polled. Sorry.
The straw poll to put this back to policy.
I just have one question. So when you did the whole inventory of our policies that we have, and I know you did it too, Kim, the two of you did it
Kimberly did
together.
it. She was
Okay.
the primary.
Did we
author.
get a list of the policies that we don't have that Shipman has?
Yeah, that's what we've been doing.
Okay.
So we're actually, I think, going into the last series now. I think we're close to done. We've gone through 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we skipped to, no, we didn't go through 4. 1, 2, 3, we skipped to 6. So I think, I mean, I can get the, total updates.
Right, we
but-
can update.
But
we've been
we've
working
gone
through it.
through at least 3/4 of it. So
Yeah, I
we're
mean,
not
I'm
that
just
far
saying
off.
we
from
have,
that.
the shipment didn't
Right.
have that we really want. So it's a combination.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm wondering if we looked at the ones that we don't have that Shipman is recommending we have.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's
we
what we're
can,
doing.
yeah, we can pull that all for one meeting. It's just, we were trying not to do more than 3
And just
or 4 at
accept
a
those.
time was what the intent was. And then COVID hit, so there
Right,
were other
yeah.
policies that took precedence. So that's part of what derailed it, but we had a plan that we were gonna do like 3 policies per meeting. And it would
Or more.
have taken us a year if that's all we did, but
Right.
then other policies take precedence, and that makes sense
Kept
for what the
coming,
board
right.
has to do. Certainly you have to address something that might take precedence over going through that crosswalk, so.
But then the other problem is when that was done, you've got all the things that are requiring
Right.
policies since that was looked at the last time, like FAFSA. You have to have a policy on FAFSA.
Right, because
Yeah,
there's
we
all
had
these
to
do that,
updates.
yeah.
Right.
So,
You know,
they
they
add.
add, yeah.
And that's why a lot of them that's why they go with the attorney documents, because they're constantly updating it for
Right.
all the current laws
Right.
that are going into effect.
But I think of the categories that are left, there aren't that many policies
Yeah.
that we need to look at.
But you're gonna have to go back and look at the ones that have law changes that we don't have policies for.
Correct, that'll be the next,
You're
right.
chasing your kids.
But that's what we usually, but that's what we've
Budget.
been doing throughout policy anyway, any changes, that's what we, so.
And on the crosswalk, we had the dates of the last time that we updated it, but obviously I'll have to go update that because the board has made updates since that original cross, so I'll have to go in and update that, but I can give you the dates that it was last updated by us. And I mean the date it was last really updated, not the date that we changed the number. Like, I'll go back and look at that because I recognize that there's an edit at the bottom
Right,
for
yeah.
when we made those
Ellen.
changes, but we didn't actually change the language.
Right.
So we
Ellen.
can address that.
Okay.
I already did that,
One
Kim.
thing, and then we're just gonna, because if we're moving this back to
right.
policy, why are we?
I just want to let Kim, before Kim does all that work, I already did that, Kim. And identified whether it was just a number change or if it was an actual policy change by the board. And Ellen has the spreadsheet.
Okay.
So it's all in date order. I did that last year.
Okay, so we're gonna move the process back to policy to make a recommendation to the board about which direction policy committee wants to proceed with the rest of the policy.
Carry out these 2 though, 5 and 6.
Pardon?
The one she just already did, 5 and 6, we can move forward, right?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the
That'll be the action
procedure.
items.
Okay, are we past 5 and 6?
Yeah, there was no other
Okay,
questions.
yeah, I'm
on
ready to
five
hear
and
about
six.
the
Five and
It's
six
just, we're
are
just
at
discussing
unavoidable.
right now, right?
Okay.
So if we want to move forward with 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, that's an action item. We're just discussing right now.
So right now where it stands is all the ones we discussed so far are moving forward except for dress codes. Dress codes getting
Number
the
2
stretch
doesn't.
out.
Yes.
All right, okay. So we had a lot of board members that wanted to address the electronic can't remember the name of the policy
Nobody
now.
can.
Device.
Use of privately owned technological devices by students. So they have some changes that they wanted to make. So my suggestion is that the board receive these, decide if they're interested in making these changes so that the attorney could vet it to go back to policy for next week. Yeah. Here it is. They made copies.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I would say we should receive these and then you as the chair should refer to the policy committee.
This is a packet.
We shouldn't discuss whether we want the
No,
attorney
it's a
to be right.
Keep going.
This is policy responsibility. I don't want to do this.
That's a packet.
He's not listening, but
Packet. No, it's not the whole thing.
Everyone else out there?
Yeah.
Here, this one. Page 1 and page 2. Okay. She needs both. Yep.
We make a motion right now?
No, in receiving this.
I make a motion.
An action, I think there's.
You can make a motion if you get the majority of the
Can I make a
board.
motion? We just pass this right off the policy so they can review it and come up with their approvals and then bring it back to the full board.
second.
So the request, just for discussion, as a first and a second, the discussion is, the question was to have these changes looked at by the attorney for the policy. So if you push it to policy,
Okay.
then the attorney wouldn't be able to look at the proposed changes prior
They
to the
relate to
policy.
the document.
Did the policy committee suggest this to the board? Is this a recommendation from a committee of the board?
No.
Then I think that committee should make a recommendation to the board about whether that committee, which is responsible for this, is even interested before I'm interested.
Where did changes come from?
I make a motion we discuss. Where they come, it started with me, but I'm gonna read you an email that prefaced this whole process.
Okay.
From, I'm not gonna say his name, if you don't know his name, you can tell the superintendent, and assistant superintendent. But he is someone who is working in the school system. This is the beginning of the process. Subsequent to that, it got even worse. But anyway, I'll read you his email.
I mean, it's a public email that was
Okay.
sent, so I think it's.
All right, Jerry Carmel. Good morning. I don't know if the information you're receiving about cell phones is, but the cell phone policies are not being adhered to. I've been told from staff and students that this is not that, and I'll take my responsibility, which was contrary to this. Comments that secondary phones are being used, check-in procedures at times being ignored, if not most of the time, phones being used throughout the day, and some staff ignoring bill use, are only some of the issues. Not trying to get someone in trouble here, but once again, a board policy not being followed. We spent a lot of time and research on cell phones and you've used taxpayer money to invest it into cell phones. Why is this happening? Please do not tell me it has been going well. Then you want to uniforms, but that's another story. My response was, Jerry, things have improved drastically. I'm not gonna read it, it's about 7 paragraphs. Most of the teachers that I hear from have said it's working, but at the same time, we are hearing drips and drabs at the door that many things are not being followed per our policy. And I indicated I would follow up. And that was, I told Fiona, I left it at that. Since then, I've been approached by, anybody wants to come with me, they can speak to about 20 kids that regularly tell me nobody follows the policy, and they're kids that are at the gym that they can talk to. Most of them are athletes. I'm not going to say I'm not indicating who they might be coming from other than their athletes, because that's the only kids I see at the gym. But at the same time, I had 2 parents last week approach me. One of them terribly upset because his daughter's been, I think, maybe 2 or 3 policy problems because her phone has not been in the backpack and has not been in the pouch. He accused me of, not us, he accused the board of not following its own policy because his daughter has to take her phone out, leave it on top of her desk. And she's gotten used to it in some of the classes. And he doesn't understand how she can get in trouble when the board doesn't enforce the policy. I explain to him that we will do our best to fix the problem. There are numerous teachers who have complained, and I'm not gonna give their names, but I told Fiona, and I know many people at this desk have heard the same thing, that they're just not enforcing the policy. It's much, much, much better than it was before. But how often are we gonna have a policy, as Jerry said, like the Board of Ed always does, that doesn't have teeth or get followed? If we're not gonna enforce the policy. I haven't heard this about the middle school. Middle school, I've heard, is vastly improved since they've come down. But the kids are walking into the front of the school with no phone in their pouch. Kids are walking in with the phones in their back pockets. It goes on and on and on. If they're gonna have a policy that works, so let's just not spend the money next year. And Sue was very clear, Sue Wilmot, the superintendent, that, you know, this isn't about the pouches, it's just about people not happy that the policy is not being followed. Or the people, one of the person in particular that's very angry at me said, just get rid of the policy. I don't believe it in the first place. Just get rid of it. Because you can't have a policy that some kids think is okay to not follow, and other kids think they have to follow. I don't know what the number at the door is that's being followed. That's being, the number of kids that are being checked, but there's other people on this board that have heard the same thing. They're just saying. I'm done hearing the complaints. I'll stand at the door if I have to. But I know from teachers and I know from parents, there's a very disparate but this the way the house is being followed. Yes.
So we have video cameras. You can watch the video camera. You can see the process. Brian Scott watches you can see the kids actually go through the whole same process they go through at the middle school every single morning in terms of their pouches. So we see that and we have people there. And so if you have people complaining about certain classrooms, please tell us the teacher's name, because we have administrators randomly in classrooms doing observations, what have you. But this, oh, he said, kind of sure, this is happening, this is not fair for this, but not this. We can't address it unless you tell me it's happening in room 205. And so then the administration will be in there. You see how many infractions that they've had this year. That means that an administrator, a dean, a security personnel had to address all of those issues. That's a ton of issues. That's a large portion of their day. And I did say that at the very beginning, that tech for THS is their #1 issue, and they're addressing it. So if you have other information, we would love to know so that we can address it.
Okay, so I've told you, they're saying it starts.
Tell me the teacher.
No.
And we can show you.
And I think this is part of the problem, is it's really up to every single person in the building to ensure that this is being followed.
If there are that many there, which I'm certain there are more, if there are that many there, please explain to me how they're getting through.
We have it on video. They're walking through. It's a seamless process at this point. It's part of the routine. Remember, for the middle school, we have 1,000 kids. For the high school, we have 1,000 kids. They still get checked in every single morning. It's on video. If you want to watch it on video, I'll show it to the board. We can do it in executive session.
Why don't you give us the authority that some people ask, actually stop it and just watch the process.
Come watch the process. Come in the morning. Whenever, every day. We're here every day.
You know, I don't believe 2 or 3 dozen students and parents, and she's heard some of the comments, which I brought the phone, are consistently complaining that the kids will tell you, and you're more than welcome to come to my gym. They're more than willing to tell you. There are 20-some kids saying, they've in my back pocket. They don't check the backpacks. I show them an empty pouch.
Give me the list.
So how do you know if you're looking at the video, how do you know if the pouch is empty or not?
It doesn't matter at that point. Not empty, but they may have a dummy phone in there. We said this was going to be an issue. If that student is violating later in the day, then we catch them.
But why would you let it get that? We have the right to randomly check backpacks.
No, we don't.
I disagree with you.
No, no, we do not. We do not have the
It's in
right
this
to
policy.
search.
So
people.
there's, if you have reasonable.
Yeah, if we have reasonable cause, what would the reasonable cause be? They're not a danger to someone.
It's number C.
You don't think
So-
cell phones are a danger?
Jerry, I don't know, it's like an imminent danger, like the school. is
Point of
going to
order,
blow up.
there is a motion on the table to refer this to the committee. If the discussion's not germane to that motion, it shouldn't be happening.
So the question is, so this is the proposed changes that are being requested. Does people want these vetted by the attorney prior to the policy?
Point of order, there's
or
a
do you
motion
want
on the
to-
table. There's a motion on the table to refer this to the policy.
No, there's no motion on the table.
Yes, there is. The chair acknowledged the motion was made and seconded.
Said that the board had to agree to accept that the motion was made, I believe. And that was never taken, that vote was never taken.
That's not how the rules work, but I'm not gonna drag it out. The argument's
This is
back.
the chair, there's your chairman right there. That's
The
what
chair
she
should
said.
know the rules. Let's move this along.
I didn't hear a motion either.
Well, my question to you is because.
No, to Ed, right, no, to Ed, I was just,
Go around and around and around and around and around on these things anymore. We're wasting
a lot of time.
time. So if people want to consider these proposed changes, because we have the original policy vetted by the attorney, I think we should have a change vetted by the attorney. So you can either talk about this at policy next week, review these changes, then send it to the attorney to look at these 4 changes, then bring it back the next month, and sometime in April or May we'll get to this. Or people can look at the suggested change so that you're ready for a discussion in policy next week.
Okay, I'll bring up a question.
Go ahead.
So if we're gonna change this policy midway through the school year and someone has already had offense number 2, or they had 1 offense already, now they're gonna go to offense number 2, which the new part rules that they want is in-school suspension for your second offense versus their second offense would have been the administrator takes the phone and calls the parents. So what is gonna happen with that? How do we change the teeth halfway through the school year with this? Like what's going
It would have to probably start over. I'm not saying that as a definite, but in all fairness, if it were to, if the ground rules are gonna change drastically, then it would have to, I think, start from the beginning. They all start fresh.
I think that the time to have this conversation would be after the school year is over and we can view the disciplinary data germane to this topic. I think Sean makes an excellent point. And Sue, you're probably right. Like that's probably the way that it would have to be done. And I don't think that's fair either. If someone's had multiple offenses for them to go back to 0. But there's no good way to change this in the middle of the school year. And I'm not sure that we've heard adequate justification for changing it. So I think, the concern that I'm hearing from Gary sounds more like an enforcement concern and not a concern specific to the offense breakdown itself. And that's not really something that we can deal with by changing the content of the policy. So that's my suggestion, is to table it until the end of the school year, look at the data, and then have another discussion about this. Because this is something that's still relatively new. This will be our first full school year with yonder pouches, especially at the high school level. And that would be a good time to review it and see if there's changes that we want to make.
I don't disagree that, well, I will agree it's an enforcement policy. I don't know who, it's an enforcement policy. It may just be a few people, maybe a lot. I don't know. So, I don't know, but wait till the end of the year. I just don't understand why we can't.
I would rather not wait till the end of the year if it's creating problems. Or just if there's issues, maybe there's, and Sue, I'd like to get a deeper look at the graphs that you showed us tonight. I don't know if they're in an email or if they can be sent to us in an email. And just as far as the, and I think we've been building up to this discussion as far as where the disciplinary actions are arising, whether it be classroom, cafeteria, hallway, whatever it might be. I'm sorry, I'm struggling to talk.
Yeah, I have to interrupt you for 1 minute because I think I have to have a motion to extend the meeting. Let's extend the meeting for till 9:15. For a motion to extend till 9:15.
Second.
All those in favor?
Um,
Okay, go ahead, Sue.
I'm
Opposed? John?
No, I'm also
Never
opposed.
voted to extend.
Go ahead.
But didn't you second it, Ed?
No, I did not.
No.
No.
I did.
Thank you.
Blended.
No, you get what you pay for.
Okay, go ahead, Sue.
I was just saying, I think after looking at at the statistics and the data that you put together for us, it'll help us better determine if it's an issue right now that needs to be changed or if it's something that can wait.
Okay,
And Gary has, Gary, you've been gathering information too, so we should take a look at that with it.
So is it the will of the board for policy to look at this next week? Let's straw poll that first. If you want policy to take a look at this next week, raise your hand. 2.
What are the options? Look at it next week or what?
The options which the board wishes to do. If the board wishes to wait, look at this now, look at this in June, look at this in April.
Oh. No, I would rather look at it now, sooner than later.
All everybody's asking for is for these 4 ideas to go to their attorney to be potentially approved as acceptable verbiage, correct, in a policy?
That would these steps be sufficient if the board wished to change the disciplinary steps to these steps?
And all we're asking the board tonight is to approve this verbiage to be run by the attorney. So we could do that, and there's no real actionable item.
But if it's not gonna go to policy, I'm not sure we wanna incur the expense to have a way to look at it.
Well, that verbiage is already in there. Those 4 things are already in there. They're just editing really just
In a
one,
different order.
and they're taking out the in-school suspension portion.
It's not though, then it's a different consequence because it's optional suspension. Would be a mandatory suspension. Optional expulsion, this would be a.
All right, regardless of the
definitive referral.
exact verbiage, we would follow our 4-step process and use that verbiage. And one of them is gonna change to an out-of-school suspension versus whatever one number 3 was.
The other addition on this is that students loses the privilege of bringing any electronic devices into school buildings for the remainder of the school year, which, we need a legal opinion on that because I know when Jessica had shared with us, when this first came up, she said really up to 2 weeks because it's their personal device. It's not like it's our Chromebook and we can just take it back.
I think
So
that
then
was for
that was another
confiscation.
issue.
I think what this means is they would lose the right to even use the yonder pouch.
No, it's just, we'd have to have the lawyer look at it because loses the privilege of bringing any electronic device. And within this policy, electronic devices, earpods, cell phone, Apple watches, as defined, because there's a whole list of those things.
Well,
that
2
makes it
becomes 1.
Complicated.
2 becomes 1, 3 becomes 2, number 3 is new, and 4 should just remain as 4. Follow the same. No, it's not, Gary. It's not more complicated. We shouldn't make it,
No, you were
oh,
saying-
right? So really, the only new thing would be number 3. And that verbiage.
but the question is, do we want this to go back to policy? Or do we want Shipman to look at changing the consequences?
Why can't we have them look at it before it goes to policy, just to get that part out of the way?
Right.
So we know whether or not it's something that it can even be considered.
Well, that's the ask, but some are saying they don't want to even look at it right now. So I think the majority just needs to decide, do we want to look at this? Do we not want to look at this? Kathy, Gary?
Doesn't it make sense for us to gather the data for a year before we make any major changes to a policy that I think we just passed? This is the 1st or 2nd year we've been using this? Second.
Well, first year for the high school.
First year for the high school.
Yeah.
I guess in my mind, I'm thinking we need to gather a little more data, but I also think that we need to look at, because if we're hearing that the policy is being inconsistently enforced, and you have names that you could share, not on camera, but, and that needs to be enforced. I mean, you know, it's not okay to say it's okay in this classroom, but not in this one. It's not okay in any classroom, none. And I think that that's the bigger issue here. is the
Right.
enforcement.
And it's not fair to the kids that are in classrooms where it's allowed versus classrooms where it's not.
But that's my point, Sue, is that it needs to be enforced. Like, we can't.
Right? No, I agree.
Who are enforcing it, which I don't know how many there are, then that needs to be dealt with. I don't think the policy needs to get thrown out because, or changed halfway through the year when we don't have even a year's worth of data from the high school. And it may be more of an, I don't know, not supervisory, but an enforcement of the policy that needs to be looked at rather than changing it.
Gary, quickly,
Yeah,
just,
the purpose of this was to tighten the policy so that when you tighten the policy, the consequences to the children will be more. Obviously, it would hurt them a little bit more, which would prevent them from having three phones in their backpacks or showing an empty pouch, hopefully, which I know it would, because you look at the TMS results of stricter enforcement, significantly
Right.
lower number, even though younger kids. On the other side of it, better enforcement and a more tightened policy helps the teachers and the administrators not deal with the problems we're looking at. You know, it should be a 3 to 5% number. We don't know what the number is right now, but it's a simple tightening of policy. That's all the intent is, so that both sides understand there will be better, there will be more consequences if the behavior is not followed. We don't have any expulsions yet. So tightening up isn't going to, probably create more expulsions. It'll just give an indication or a suggestion to the students and to everybody else involved that we're just trying to make it work a little better and have the discipline, not spend so much time chasing kids around the school. Catch it at the door, make sure it's caught at the door. They get caught once or twice, they'll change their behavior. But that's that's all I'm suggesting. I'm just tired of hearing about it, and it is serious stuff. It's not just anecdotal. It is all the time now. I know people on this board have heard it. I know people on this board have seen it in the school. It's just, it can't be, if you want to wait till the end of the year, wait till the end of the year.
Cut Gary off there.
Yeah, come on.
go ahead.
Real quick. So the change that you're proposing is, we understand that we have an enforcement issue. That's what you feel, we have an enforcement issue. So you're changing the policy, is have tougher teeth and punish the kids more, but not punish if there is an enforcement problem. Don't address the enforcement problem. Don't punish the people that aren't forcing it, but punish the kids that.
I agree with you on that too.
So-
That's the next step.
I don't think,
I
is
don't
it
think
gonna
it
help
helps
the
the kids
teachers that may be a little flexible in this and say it's okay by making a harder punishment on the kids? You think that's gonna make them enforce it more? They still have no consequence.
Well, we should discuss that too.
Okay.
I agree with
We
you.
need to move
I
on.
don't think it's a
So
lot
what's
of
on the
teachers.
table right now is, do we wish to have the attorney look at the elevated consequences for offenses? Raise your hand if you're interested in doing that.
I'll do,
2, 3, okay. Interested in having policy, start to review this policy or wait? If you're interested in having policy, start to look at this policy again now, raise your hand. 2, 3, 4. To have policy, start reviewing this policy now.
Yes.
Okay, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Anyone else?
Sue was with us.
So 4, 5, 5. And 4 no's. So it's going to policy. So with all of this said, I am going to just state publicly for the record that all Board of Education policies need to be followed by all of our staff in the buildings, no matter who you are, from you know, every subcategory of employee, if there's a Board of Ed policy, it needs to be followed. If you see someone with their phone on their desk, it needs to be reported. Cannot be looked the other way, no matter who you are in the building. So the expectation is that the people at the door are enforcing the policy coming in, but that continues throughout the whole day, no matter where people are. Phones are not allowed on school property unless they're in the underbridge. So anytime they're out or earbuds are out is a violation of the policy. So I would not want to see an employee getting themselves caught up with failing to comply with the Board of Education policy. So please, 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 if you don't know the policy, familiarize everyone with it, so that we don't have to have these discussions. Moving on. All right.
We have 5 minutes.
Yes, so. All right, let's go quick. TMS roof RFP. I'll give it till 9:14.
So you guys, we talked about it at facilities, it was boilerplate. We're just looking to put our RFP out there to hire a design professional to put the roof that you guys chose for Torrington Middle School on the building. Pretty cut and dry.
Yep. Any questions? A lot of people have saw this at nauseam.
7 years.
New course proposals, principles of biology and entrepreneurship. These were discussed at school improvement. Does anybody have any questions on those that people that work at school improvement? Okay. Board of Ed schedule 23-24. Everyone got a copy. It was due to the city by January 31st, so I let you guys know that I had forwarded the draft to the city so that we would meet the statutory deadline. But tonight is really to formally approve that information. So, did anyone have any concerns with any of the dates on the Board of Ed schedule? Our meeting schedule? Everyone's all set? Okay. Board of Ed committee assignments, and I apologize because I actually forgot to bring it. So I will email those assignments to them. There's really only one change. For the most part, everyone wanted to stay on the committees they were assigned to. So Jeff is going to backfill where Nikki was on budget and facilities. And Jess Richardson is moving off of facilities and going to school improvement and policy because they meet on the same night. So that's really the only changes. And Glenn is going to be chairing facilities. So that's the only real changes, but I'll send you out the list tomorrow.
Oh,
No. Susan Prentice is actually chairing.
Gary, that was an improvement.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay. Item G is removed.
Can I ask a question in regards to that?
Yeah.
You spoke about a 10-day period and the thing that went out seemed to be longer for 10 days.
Yeah, because of the posting of when we can get it posted to all the sites. It's not immediate everywhere, so we wanted to give enough time for people to be able to apply.
Okay, so is today
And then
count as
there's
the
a
posting
holiday
day
in the
since it went
middle.
out? It go out today.
It's up, and on any sites that posted immediately, it's on those sites, but they're
Okay.
not all immediate. And then we have a holiday in the middle, so the 22nd is,
So we're adding another 5 days from our. So that's gonna, by the time we get those results, it's gonna back up our timeline.
well, we'll be ready on the 22nd to schedule interviews of anyone in that first catch. So we had a few applicants today already, right when it got posted, so.
You go, Gary.
Okay. I'm gonna ask, unfortunately, for the liaison reports to be sent, even though I hate to do this, but I'm also gonna ask Marissa if she can make them, attach them to the minutes so that they're available to the public. And I'm gonna ask the board to consider not doing our committee reports, just in the essence of time, unless anyone has something specific. Okay, hold on. So I'm gonna entertain a motion to extend the meeting till 9:20.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
John? Ed? Okay.
Wait, who made them, who,
I did.
Jess and Gary?
So we got 5 minutes, guys. Let's go.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
so is there any committee reports that people feel that they have to make a report on?
I think we should go through policy again.
You're done.
Not. Anyone have any other,
Tired. You're tired.
any? We're moving on. Okay, entertain a motion to approve the retirement incentive for all bargaining units.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Kathleen, Gary.
Abstain,
Same, okay.
abstain.
Entertain a motion to approve the monthly financials.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion to approve policy number 5003, 5028, 5051, 31, sorry, 5069, and 5091 in a bundle.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're removing item 4, that's going back to policy. Entertain a motion to approve the RFP for TMS roof.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion to approve the new course Principles of Biology 2.
So moved.
So moved,
Are you willing to second that?
sure,
All
yes,
those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
John and Sue.
Entertain a motion to approve the new course Entrepreneurship.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Gary and Kathy.
Entertain a motion to approve the Board of Ed schedule for 23-24.
Second.
All those in favor?
John and
Aye.
Kathy.
Faster, Jeff.
We're removing the next item. Entertain a motion to approve the Board of Ed regular meeting minutes of December 14th and the special meeting minutes in a bundle.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Need to
I
abstain.
abstained. I abstained.
Entertain a motion to receive the committee meeting minutes. And if anyone has questions, because we didn't do the reports, reach out to the chairs of those committees. Anyone want to move to receive the committee meetings?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
all those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Wait a minute. Who was it?
Kathy and Glenn.
Thank you.
Okay, entertain a motion to approve the consent, receive the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
For upcoming agenda.
Fiona, point of order.
Nope, no,
Did we need to appoint a new board member to personnel committee?
we did. Good job. Thank you. I have- Entertain a motion to add Jeff Putnam to the Personnel Search Committee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Gary and Glenn.
Another committee for you.
It's great, everything.
All right, items for upcoming agenda, monthly financials, dress code, budget. Okay, comments to the good of the order. John,
Would like to thank you for running the sick meeting last month.
No, nothing.
Gary.
Making progress.
Nothing other than welcome, Jeff.
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
welcome.
welcome,
Welcome. It's been around long enough.
You're in for a lot of fun.
I'm close to the door.
I want to thank Sue and whoever else is involved in providing behavior data. That was very comprehensive and helpful. I think we only can improve upon that as we go along and understand things about the cell phone discipline and so forth. It'll be helpful. I think this was very well put together. Thank you.
Yes.
I actually have a really good report for the high school tonight. Yeah.
Email
Email it.
I know, I will email. I do want to say they have a play coming up. And maybe when we send our liaison reports, maybe those could be sent out prior to the.
Thank you all for welcoming me to the group. I look forward to working with all the board and administration moving forward. Have a good night.
Also want to welcome Jeff. We're very happy to have you. And you know, you'll do a good job. Very happy to see you already had a budget question.
I also want to thank the admin team because they supplied the Swiss data. We went back and forth, many iterations. So thank you. And they live it every day and we meet regularly to talk about it. So more information to come. And welcome, Jeff. Welcome back.
Welcome, Jeff, and I forgot to mention this, in this packet, there's the actual copy of an independent evaluation that was done on the LEAP program through the Connecticut University system. And I included it here because Torrington participated, was invited to participate in the evaluation process.
Thank you.
Happy to be back. Feel better, Sue.
Thank you. Thank you.
Marissa. Sue. Sue.
Oh, me?
Hang on.
No, thank you very much for the updates. Sue, on the Office of Teaching and Learning, I love to hear about the reading updates. That's very exciting. The Swiss data report out was fantastic. Jeff, welcome to the Board of Ed. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So,
All those in favor?
Hearing.